Naked at Night with Lance Richland, me, and Rick Rosner. Rick Rosner has the highest IQ in America, and he is a little late because he's getting chicken. Ah, so I guess that's an endorsement.
I was here to ask that, as producer of the show, does Popeyes get an endorsement check? Do we get an endorsement check from Popeyes and all along those lines? Because we might have to talk to Popeyes because I definitely have eaten Popeyes myself, have had Bojangles and all along those lines. Popeyes has some great dirty rice, by the way. So I don't know if you have that brown rice or the macaroni and cheese, but they definitely have some amazing things in that category and all along those lines. So glad to see that you're back, Rick. Just grubbing on that Popeyes, making
Yeah,
me
yeah.
hungry, and it's too late to get Popeyes here in Durham, North Carolina. So y'all in California, y'all can get it because it's about 9 o'clock there, but it's about midnight here, so it's much too late to get Popeyes. I just had some Mediterranean food earlier, and all along those lines. And Lance, I've got to really tease you and everything because I could be wrong, but I think I literally cleaned my plate. There's nothing there and everything, so the plate has been totally cleaned. I think it's been totally gone, so there's very little left. So I think I demolished it.
Thank you for staying up late with us. This is a bi-coastal show, so it's it's happening at 9 p.m. and at midnight.
By the way,
And
you're in North Carolina.
That is correct.
You have a representative bishop that is a real star in the U.S. Congress.
Which star are you talking about, Mr. Tillis?
Representative Bishop,
Oh,
named Bishop. Anyway,
yes.
he's a North Carolinian.
I assume he's a Republican if you think he's a star.
Yeah, he's a terrific guy. He's trying to save the country from the Democrat regime.
You guys always think the country is in danger of falling into some horrible morass or
Well,
worse.
let's see. The election was stolen. There
No,
are
no, no, no.
there are
Hold on. Let's
there
hold
are
off on the
there are,
nonsense. for
there
half
are
a second.
thousands of January 6th patriots that are being put in prison
Right.
without trial. The FBI is raiding the homes of all the prominent Republicans. I myself can't be on Twitter. Our stuff's been taken off
You
YouTube
can be
and
on Twitter.
Facebook.
Elon Musk is very sympathetic.
That,
to
well, I
you
can't.
guys.
I've asked.
What? What did
But that's a diversion, Rick. I don't want to talk about whether Elon Musk will let me on Twitter, which he won't.
Why won't he? He's let all these conservatives back on.
Okay. Well, he didn't let me on, and he doesn't. He
When
hasn't.
was the last time you asked?
You already did, like a few weeks ago. But the point is that conservative voices are being removed from the internet, and prominent conservatives are being imprisoned for nothing.
If they pooped in the Capitol, yeah, they go.
No, that we have grandmothers that walked in there and took some selfies
Well,
that are now in prison. They're not even giving them trials.
I find that there's why because they're being held before trial.
For 3 years without a trial.
Yeah, but this happened in 21 and it's only 23, so 23 minus 21 is 2.
Oh, only 2 years without a trial. Well, thank God you know math.
I know this is one of the times where if we've done this show for about 5 years, and this is one of the, if we were doing the show old format where we only had about 300 people watching us on YouTube, this is where I'd say stop, cut, and we would go look up and see if there are any actual grandmas being held without bail for 2 years. And because I don't, but we're not.
I know you could never believe that the Democrats would do such a thing, huh?
I,
I'm not making this up.
uh,
But
but sometimes
by
it
the way-
turns out that
By
there
the
are.
way, I want to know something else. This week, the report was released on the FBI and Clinton involvement on the Russian collusion hoax.
Yeah. I mean, I don't
And-
call it a hoax, but okay.
Yeah, well, you should call it a hoax because the report stated that the whole thing was made up by Hillary Clinton's campaign.
Is this the Durham?
the Durham report.
Out of which, like, there was like one person charged with a minor.
No, there were two people that were charged, but he said that, and one of them was convicted. But he stated that that Hillary Clinton made up the whole, paid for the dossier, paid $1 million to a British intelligence guy, and that he hired out of that a Russian living in the U.S. and they wrote the dossier, they made it up, then they presented it to Obama. Actually, Brennan of the CIA said that this is what's going to happen. It was presented that they were making this up, and for 3 years, well, longer, for 5 years
Right,
now,
well,
you've been telling me
This is an
that,
argument we've been
that
having
Trump-
since
yeah, but
2016 or
yeah,
2017.
yeah, but the argument's over. You lost. You were wrong.
No, because like the Durham investigation and report resulted in what, 2 people getting charged, 1 person with minor stuff. Now,
No, it wasn't
now-
minor. The FBI changed evidence.
they
Okay, what happened was an FBI lawyer wanted to be able to surveil the Trump campaign. So what he did was he wrote to the CIA and asked if one of their people who was working for the Trump campaign was a spy. And the CIA wrote back, no, he works for us.
Carter, what's his Carter Page?
Page. Or no, was it Carter? Yeah. And so the FBI changed the document to say that he was not working for the CIA.
Yeah, I remember this was an
They
argument.
framed him.
This is something we went over like 3-4 years
Yeah,
ago.
but that's proof that they had to change evidence in order to surveil
Yeah, and the
Trump.
result is that it changed the level of investigation they were doing. They were already there was already
No. What it meant was it meant that they could get a FISA warrant to tap. Well, they don't tap phones anymore, but they could surveil using whatever sophisticated equipment they had to anybody in the Trump
it
campaign.
changed the level of investigation.
No. What it did was it gave them permission to surveil the Trump campaign. It didn't change the level of anything. I know you have that in your head because you keep repeating that phrase, but that's not what happened. That gave them permission to surveil the Trump campaign because it's a 2-step process. If they can surveil Carter Page, they can surveil anybody that he speaks to and anybody that person speaks to.
But even without that, they were still going to investigate people around.
No, the basis of the whole scandal was the Steele dossier, which was written.
No, you keep saying that, but no, there was plenty of other stuff
But
besides
that's not
Steele.
that's not what the Durham report says. I just read the Durham report.
You read
I
all.
didn't read all 200 pages. I read excerpts of it, and it said the genesis of the whole Russian collusion hoax
But that's not accurate.
was
It
from this. Well,
it
so
was-
you got to go fight with Durham.
all right.
Hey,
So,
Lance, and Rick, I got a quick question for you because y'all were earlier eating and they're still eating, you and the crew in there, everything, some Popeyes and some, there is a major competition that they have that is part of what they are involved with. And it comes back to y'all's conversation because I know that Chick-fil-A prides itself on being a Christian organization and also has done a lot of support for right-wing politics, and definitely the founder Tony Perkins has definitely come out and supported a lot of the politics of the right and all in that kind of space. And he definitely is proud of his
but
Christian heritage and all in that kind of way. But the other thing is that y'all don't know this, but later on today, like I think around 7 o'clock today or something, Bernie Sanders is actually going to be here in Durham, and he's going to be here with Reverend Barber. And part of what they're going to be discussing is this push to have the wages raised to $17 an hour. And apparently Popeyes, where you're getting your food from, has gotten into some troubles for their pay rates, because apparently the cooks at Popeyes are only getting $8.32 an hour as a cook, and the parent company made a revenue of $5.35 billion back in 2018. But there are some people that are talking about their stance as a pay organization and all in that space. And that was just one example. So I was just wondering, Rick, because I know you're very liberal and everything. You got some Popeyes. Do you think that these workers need to get $17 an hour, and were you going to give them $9 of the order that you just made to them, since they are apparently being woefully underpaid?
Well, I mean, certainly in LA they should get 17 an hour because LA is expensive. I don't know, what the cost of living is in other states, but I can't imagine there's a state where 832 is close to a living wage. It might be okay. I mean, it used to be that fast food jobs went to high school kids who didn't have who were living at home and didn't have the expenses of some. So, but that's no longer the case. So yeah, 832 is pretty bad. We should talk about. So we're going to move on from Durham, and I continue to believe that Trump. You always accuse me of saying Trump was a Russian spy, which I've never claimed. I do believe that Trump was a Russian duke. Was always kind of too affectionate, too kind of in bro love with Putin. But let's move on from that.
Wait a minute.
Hold on. You got to make major points.
If you're gonna say that, this is good that we're having a news show here.
No. I want to talk about Chick-fil-A.
No. You just said that you thought that Trump was in bro love with Putin. Now, this is a very interesting thing, and I'll bet Mark has never heard of this. There was a battle in Syria between American and Russian forces during the Trump administration. And Rick pretends that doesn't matter. Under the Trump administration, the two forces, as you recall, we had both countries had troops in Syria. The Russians attacked our troops, and Trump ordered that they defend themselves. They killed 300 Russian troops.
Were they actual Russian soldiers?
Yes, they were.
They weren't Russian mercenaries?
Well, they were from the Wagner Group.
Yeah, so they so I don't know if it's
the Wagner Group works for the Russian government.
So I don't know if it's a big distinction.
It isn't. You're quibbling.
But
Mark,
hold on. But let's be clear. They weren't Russian soldiers.
No,
they were Russian citizens hired to be mercenaries by this company that sells its services to.
There may have been Russian troops, and also they were there under the mandate of the Russian government. You can't just take soldiers. And
No, I'll give you this. This did happen, though. If you look at it, I mean, we miss a lot of subtleties, and some of the subtleties are important. Some of the subtleties aren't important.
They were stationed
but if you
there
look at
by the Russian government.
But if you look at that one thing,
they were Russian soldiers working for the Russian government, and they were killed under Trump's orders.
Yeah, but then what I say a lot is Google it and read about it, because
you can't argue. That's why.
Because I don't
listen
listen to 50 hours worth of podcasts a week.
Yeah, but for 4 years now, I've been telling you about this battle.
I know it, and
you keep saying no, it didn't happen. I don't
back
believe
in 2019 or 2018. I went I Googled it, I read about it,
yes.
And I could talk about it with you in some degree of detail.
I don't remember much detail about it. All I remember is that I don't believe Trump would have killed 300 Russian soldiers and can then be credibly accused of being a Russian dupe.
Well, you take that on the one hand, and then you take everything else on the other hand.
What's the other? On the other hand, what's the other hand?
All the things that Trump did.
Name three.
That he continues to be. Well, I mean, he interfered with getting arms to Ukraine.
No, he didn't. Under Trump, we gave them very valuable anti-tank missiles that the Obama administration had denied them. The Obama administration was the administration that only sent them blankets and medical supplies.
So Trump has continued to, I don't know what his stance is on Ukraine versus Russia right now. But he's continued to say things, I believe, that are supportive of Putin.
No, he said that he could end the war if they allowed him to negotiate.
He didn't say how.
I
Because
know.
He
There's
didn't
only
say what he would happen under a
okay,
negotiated
as I say,
settlement.
there's only one way it can end through negotiation.
Yeah,
There's
but he didn't say
there's
what the terms of the negotiation.
Why should he?
So anyway, I want to move on from this.
Okay.
So, because Chick-fil-A is interesting because Chick-fil-A isn't open on Sundays because they're a very Christian company.
Mhm.
And until like 2 weeks ago, Chick-fil-A was in good favor among conservatives. Then they appointed a black guy as head of diversity. And a lot of conservatives are now, I don't know how, if it's a huge movement, it's certainly not as big as Boycott Target, but a lot of people conservatives are angry at Chick-fil-A for even having a head of diversity. So, I mean, that's interesting a little bit to me that people are pissed at Chick-fil-A. I personally think Popeyes tastes better than Chick-fil-A. I think it's less greasy, just as tasty, but less salty. So there you go.
But how do you feel about the other stereotypical chicken franchise? Because I'm not gonna lie, usually if I get chicken, I get either Popeyes or I get Bojangles, and of course Bojangles has that interesting history around the name Bojangles and everything. But it does have good chicken, not as good as Popeyes.
We don't have as many Bojangles out here. I've never been to a Bojangles. I would like to try it.
Hang on, take your shirt off. Here's what we're gonna do. Every time we move your head, I'm gonna hit you.
Okay, but to hear Mark,
I don't need to have your shirt off. Unless
you just told me to take my shirt.
No, okay. Just be in the pose now. Okay, lower your head. All right, raise it up a little bit. Great. Okay, don't move.
Okay. And so I had some topics that we could talk about without yelling at each other.
Okay.
The first is humor. I was out on the picket line with the Kimmel people today. We picketed mostly Disney, but then ABC is a couple blocks away from Disney, so we walked by there. And so it was nice to see all those people. But anyway, I've got a comedy history. I've written more than 120,000 jokes. You grew up with one of the greatest comedy writers of his era, your dad.
He was voted that, though. It's not our opinion. He was voted that by the critics.
Voted the greatest comedy writer of.
They had something called Filmdom's Famous Fives, and he was considered in the top 5 of Hollywood in 1960, I think, or 64. One of the early 60s.
So,
Hey, Lance, speaking of critics, growing up, I remember watching, and I was a fan of Roger and Ebert and everything. But I'm just wondering, what did your dad think of critics like Roger and Ebert? And did he have a great deal of respect? And of course, everybody loved watching their point counterpoint kind of arguments about a movie that was coming out and all along those lines. I know there are other more recent critics, but what was your dad's opinion of the critics like Roger and Ebert?
My father's films always got good reviews, except for one film that he did, he did this film with Barbra Streisand called For Pete's Sake, and that particular film didn't get very good reviews, but it still was a big hit. Probably because of Barbra Streisand being at her peak at that point.
wasn't that like, it seems like she had a huge hit with What's Up, Doc?
Yeah, this was sort of a sequel, not a sequel, but it was a follow-up kind of.
It was trying to be the same thing.
Yeah, and what happened was the director took out half of the jokes because he didn't think he was an action film director, and he said these things could never happen. So he said that would never happen in real life. So he took out half of the jokes. So the film wasn't quite as funny as my dad wrote it, and so he wasn't mad at the critics for that. The rest of his films got great reviews. He actually has 2 films in the top, 50 comedies of all time.
The Writers Guild list?
I don't know who makes the list, but he did okay by critics.
Sounds like he did and everything. What was his thought around campy classics? Because I know there are a couple of TV shows and even movies that were not that great in terms of their scripts or things along those lines, but folks still love them and everything. Actually, here in North Carolina, a friend of mine actually did the score for Jeepers Creepers, and that would be one of those that is a cult classic. And of course, there is Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is a cult classic, and there are a number of others as well. So just wondering, Rick and Lance, what your thoughts are around the cult classics, and if you have any favorite cult classics. Because, like I said, I know I personally don't like clowns, and part of that is because of the original movie It. But I did see Jeepers Creepers after I realized that my friend John Howie had written the score for that. I think for both of them, both that one and the sequel, and all along those lines. But what is your thoughts around cult classics, and is there a favorite cult classic that you both have enjoyed?
One of my favorite movies, and it's not really a cult classic, but it's an enduring movie, is Groundhog Day. Um, and I don't know, it's just a movie that holds up. And then Tom Cruise did a similar movie, except with lots of killing and dying, called Edge of Tomorrow, which is about a guy who lives the same day.
What about you, Lance? You got any cult classic favorites, or would you ever bother to see Jeepers Creepers?
Well, I don't know. I've never seen that film, but or show. But the my favorite comedy turns out not to be a cult classic. It's just a classic. Monty Python and the Holy Grail is now considered the ninth best comedy ever written. I don't know what the other eight are or 10, but
Which one was that?
the Holy Grail,
Oh, the Holy Grail. I got you right.
it was the first Monty Python film.
And it's a
One of-
medieval quest starring Monty Python.
Yeah, and I also liked Doctor Strangelove,
Mhm.
which is also not really a cult classic because it's a classic. Um,
And as far as some of the cult classics are like schlocky horror.
Mhm.
Jeepers Creepers, I think, was a pretty classy horror movie. Was that the one that takes place in a mortuary?
Yeah, I believe so, if I remember correctly.
It's got like spiky balls that fly, I think, and impale people.
Yeah, I
I
want to
mean,
say this.
but I don't like movies with a high body count just for the sake of having a high body count. Uh,
Well, that was my issue with movies like what is it, Jason and Freddy Krueger, and all of those. They seem to have high body counts, even though I know that there are a number of folks that like those slasher kind of movies, but they never
so they
really resonated with me.
bad. Um, what did your dad think about? Did he write for TV much at all?
my father wrote for TV, but he liked classics. He liked the Marx Brothers. He liked Woody Allen. Um, he liked Laurel and Hardy and Chaplin. So he had classic
Well,
tastes.
what did he think about the lazy TV of the '60s and '70s?
Yeah, he thought he didn't watch any sitcoms or anything. He didn't watch. Uh, he was always criticizing the shows we would see. It was so funny. Sometimes I would think he wasn't paying attention, and then he'd speak up and say, "Ha! The writer didn't have a good line for that, so they switched scenes." Or he'd say, "They couldn't think of an ending, so they just went to commercial." So he was very critical. He knew what he was looking at towards the end. And he would tell me some amazing things about the film industry. I knew who was gay and who wasn't. I knew who was having affairs, which I can't repeat now because it was all in secret. But it was
Wasn't
interesting.
everybody pretty much banging everybody because they were protected by the studios and everybody was beautiful, right?
Uh,
I mean, all these
yeah,
huge
yeah,
stars,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, okay, yeah, that's it. Everyone was banging everyone. So that way there's not, I don't have to reveal specific
I mean, it
names.
seems like, I mean, didn't matter which sex they were, as long as everybody was super,
Yeah, but one of the other things that happened all the time in those early TV shows, and I think we alluded to it on one of the early episodes of this show, and everything was there would be these trips that would not make any sense. Like I was a fan of Charlie's Angels, I was a fan of Wonder Woman, I was a fan of a number of those shows, but I'm sitting there and I could never figure out why you would be wearing a bathing suit on a ski trip, and that was definitely a kind of one of those writing tricks that didn't make much sense, but would happen on some of the '70s kind of police dramas and things of that nature, because you're sitting there going like, okay, you're on a ski trip, you're in the middle of Colorado or Seattle or wherever these ski resorts were and everything, and you got your bathing suit. Why are you wearing a bathing suit on a ski trip?
70s TV had two things. We running out of time here?
We still got time.
We'll get to 70s TV had two things working against it. One was a culture of censorship, but there was just a bunch of stuff that you didn't talk about, during prime time, family entertainment. And two was laziness that was born of monopoly. There were three major broadcast networks in the 70s and the 60s, and there was very little else you could turn to on TV. And so you took what they gave you and you had to like it, even if you didn't like it. And I feel like, I don't know how much rewriting went on in the 70s on TV shows. Maybe I'm being unfair, but I feel like people left work fairly early in those days, writing and shooting. A lot of stuff felt slapped together. And it wasn't till like Hill Street Blues in the early 80s that you started to get more sophisticated plotting, storylines, like there were always prestige productions, but they were kind of isolated. Like the Twilight Zone was kind of a prestige, well-written production, but that was just because Rod Serling was a good writer, and there wasn't an emphasis on trying to make TV better until there was more competition via HBO and then all the other channels that started coming in the 80s.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. By the way, for those that are watching, we're trying to figure out what Jeepers Creepers was. The IMDb listing says a brother and sister driving home through isolated countryside for spring break encounter a flesh-eating creature which is in the midst of its ritualistic eating spree. And one of their taglines was, "What's eating you?" I'm not sure that would play because of some of the sexual nature of things in that phrase in this particular day and time, but it played at that time when it was on and all in that kind of way. But definitely that is the tagline. So yeah, it was two folks that were traveling and they were trying to avoid this creature that was on a eating spree.
Yeah, I most horror movies just kind of bum me out because I know most people are going to get killed. So I'll watch a little bit and then I'll like turn before the slaughter starts. There's a movie I think called X, which is about a bunch of sleazeballs making a porno on a farm, and apparently the farm family is like the family in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and they're all going to get killed. So,
but Lance and Rick, there are certain things within certain things that know going to happen in a horror film. Generally, if a minority character is introduced, more than likely he's going to get killed early on and everything. And I have never understood. Maybe y'all can explain this to me. Lance, your dad was a writer. Maybe you can explain it to me. But if you are having an incident where you have already been attacked, something has killed you, whether that was a shark, whether that was a monster, whether that was a ghost and everything, and then the next scene, everybody decides that they're going to go into the basement to investigate it or go into the ocean to investigate it. It seems to me like maybe it's just me and common sense, but if something has already eating one of your friends, I'm not going down there to investigate it. I'm going to leave it alone. But maybe that's just me and everything. But for example, in the middle of this show, if somebody was to come right here, right now, and eat up Rick, are you going to stick around and try to investigate it, or are you going to leave it and exit, you and the musician, everybody? Are you going to exit stage left, or y'all going to try to go down in the basement if he's dragged into the basement and all in that space? I personally am going to be like, hey, it was fun knowing you, Rick, but I'm not investigating, and particularly not going in that same space.
So one of the problems with writing we're done. We're going to break. We'll come back.
All right, we'll take a break right now. We'll come back with more of this discussion. So right now we're going to take a break.
The only trick you need to save time and money is to shop at Aldi. Aldi. Shop differently. Limitless length plus volume. Sensational from every angle. New Lash Sensational Sky High Mascara. Only from Maybelline, New York. Everything that touches your baby should be this comforting. Pampers Swaddlers. The #1 choice of hospitals is 2 times softer. All right, Trivago. Find me a hotel somewhere in Thailand where I can wake up with a view of the ocean. Awesome. The future. It's impossible to see. And when it's finally here, it might not be what you'd expect. It might just be better. Introducing Luxury Electric. Introducing Lucid Air. We're for those who love to discover, who don't need to travel to find something new, and who know when you spend less, you can discover even more at TJ Maxx and Marshalls. Smooth, velvety chocolate wrapped in precious gold. Ferrero Rocher.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Can Do Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Can Do Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line after him. I have always looked to natural remedies to supplement the body, and I found myself hiding herbs and minerals in foods for my family. That's when it hit me. Everyone needs Can Do Spice. Everyone should be having this. It's an exclusive brand for cooks at any level who want to create flavorful dishes with healing benefits that can satisfy the body and soul. Add a little spice to your life. Give Can Do Spice a try.
At Shirley Lou and Associates, powered by First Financial Security, our mission is to help all people achieve financial security and peace of mind.
My team and I are here to help you reach financial security tomorrow and for generations to come.
She is one of the most sincere and compassionate people that I will ever meet in my life. She sincerely wants to build a legacy where no young woman that she meets is left destitute, that they are able to be self-sufficient, to provide for a family in an emergency, to build for their future and for our future generations.
At Shirley Lou and Associates, we are changing the face of insurance and retirement plans. Our mission is to lead, empower, and grow. We are the home of tax-free retirement. We provide comprehensive planning for businesses, rollovers for retirees, and individual personal financial planning.
I'm a very people-oriented person. It's important for me to make sure my clients feel in a safe environment, make sure I feel in a safe environment, that I can trust the people that I'm working with. And I feel that here working with Shirley and my team. These people are more like family to me.
We believe entrepreneurship is a possibility for all walks of life.
Reach out to us. We would love to have a conversation to see how we can help.
Oh, we're back, I guess.
Yeah, we're back. We were asking earlier about that whole notion of why writers do that silly thing of you live in a house, there is a basement, and the first person goes into the basement, gets eaten up. In the common sense variation, the next people are not going down in the basement, but in every movie that I've ever seen, they go down and investigate it. And I was trying to figure out why that is the common theme within the writers, because I think most people are going like, sorry, Ralph, you're gone. We're not going to go investigate where you disappeared at.
That's less the case now because everybody has seen everything, especially after COVID, where people just stayed home for years and watched everything. So, good horror writing or good movie writing in general acknowledges. There's a website called tvtropes.com, which has hundreds and hundreds of cliches that show up in movie after movie. And there's even an ad for, I think, Progressive Insurance or one of those insurance companies that makes fun of people who don't get the hell out of there after, when there's danger afoot. But yeah, the cliche of people who stick around, who walk into danger after their friends get killed. That's cliche now. So better horror movies will subvert the cliches. There's a cliche called the final girl, which is that one plucky girl survives. Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween, and if I was better on horror movies, I could tell it another
Ripley and
Alien.
Yeah.
So that's a cliche. A cliche that there are cliches that will make me turn off a movie, because if this cliche made it through onto the screen, I know that there's going to be a lot of other crappy stuff. And the thing that, like, I walked out of my Big Fat Greek Wedding because it had a scene where the main female character sees the guy who's going to be her love interest and that is so attracted to him that she does a huge pratfall. And like that director who pulled the jokes out of your dad's movie, because that wouldn't happen in real life. Like, I've just gotten sick of it wouldn't happen in real life.
But don't cliches sometimes make a movie? Because there are two movies that I love dearly, and they are full of cliches, and they are definitely classics in my mind and everything. But definitely, I remember Robert Townsend's Hollywood Shuffle, and that was full of all kinds of cliches about the way that Hollywood depicts African Americans and all in that space. And I definitely was a fan of Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles, which was a play on cowboys and westerns and everything, and that was full of cliches.
Yeah, but it knew the cliches, and then it spotlighted them to make fun of them.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Hey, Lance, quick question for you and everything, as you're painting and doing a great job there of painting Rick and all in that kind of space. But we had another show earlier, and it's a show that is one of our newer shows as well. It's called Dream Stocks, and it highlights some of our local business owners and entertainers, but it is shown nationally. But the woman interviewed, it's a young lady, she interviewed her daughter. That interview actually went well because that daughter was a teenager, as I recall, and everything. But she then interviewed this last week her son. Her son was like, I want to say somewhere around the age of 7 or 8. And I'm thinking that one of the things that your dad probably taught you, which is another cliche, is don't paint, don't do movies with kids and animals, because half the time they're not going to cooperate. I mean, you got animals like Lassie and Rin Tin Tin that might have known what they were doing and were well trained, but I'm imagining that you're not exactly rushing to have cats and dogs painted in your studios, because the cats and dogs may tear up the studio and all in that space. But what is your thoughts about animals and trying to take care of animals and young kids? Because I've heard that cliche, speaking of cliches, that those are two of the hardest things to control on a movie set, an art studio, or wherever.
Actually, that idea is a little misunderstood, and let me tell you why. A lot of stars in Hollywood didn't want to work with children or animals because they steal the show.
Right.
So, which is true. Very often, if a child has any kind of speaking roles, they become almost like the supporting actor, and they take attention away from the adults. So that is, in my opinion, the main concern about using children and animals.
Lance can paint a beautiful dog portrait, which I had him do, and then he put the kibosh on any further portraits of pets because he doesn't want to become known as a pet painter.
Yeah, you can make a good living if you want to paint babies and dogs. I prefer to starve though, so I haven't done that enough.
So, which brings us to regrets.
Rick has a topic for the evening, Mark.
Okay, regrets.
I just turned 63 and Lance just turned 62. So we are getting into our.
I know I don't look it.
Hey, it's a sliding scale. I'm gonna hit 61 on July 1st. Don't let the beard and the white beard fool you. But yeah, July 1st, I will hit the big 6-1. So we've got a sliding scale: 61, 62, 63.
All right, so happy 60-year and 11-month birthday today.
Yes.
So, Lance, your regrets.
Well, why don't you start? It's your
Okay,
topic.
all right,
'Cause
so-
I want to know what kind of regret we should be regretting.
All right, JD brought up Harvey Weinstein because we were talking about Hollywood people and asked you if you thought he was an anomaly, and you said nah. Though he was kind of, I think, a reflection of an earlier. He had his own monstrous behavior. He probably took it farther than, well, he's in prison for the rest of his life, so he took things pretty far. But also, it was a throwback to the sexually abusive practices of the studio system of the 30s and 40s. But I would like to think that going forward, there will be fewer Harvey Weinsteins. For a guy like Weinstein, for a rapist, when I took women's studies, we were taught that sex is more a crime of power than a crime of sexual release. And Adam Carolla, our friend, disagrees with that. He says it's one of the few crimes of power where you ejaculate at the end.
But back up here for a second, Rick, because I want to see if I'm hearing you correctly. Because one of the stereotypes of Hollywood, and I'm sure it existed definitely when you were on the Kimmel Show, and even when Lance's dad was out there and everything. So you're trying to tell me that for all those starlets that are rushing to LA and rushing even to some degree to New York, even though New York is just now bouncing back, but they do have a Broadway theater and all in that kind of way, that the casting couch doesn't exist as much as it did in the 30s and 40s. Because I talked to some of my friends that are in the acting profession, including some that are aspiring actresses. They give me the impression that it still exists, but maybe they are misinterpreting some of the advances and all in that kind of way. But the casting couch doesn't exist in the year 2023.
I'm sure it does, but it's a little bit more convoluted. It's less blatant, and it reflects people the same way with a horror movie. You don't want to, throw in a bunch of obvious cliches. People making their way through Hollywood, and the guys trying to engage in sexual coercion, and the women who either are or are not willing to go along with it or get trapped. And it's all a little bit more nuanced because people are a little bit more aware. So it's not that it doesn't happen anymore. I would hope that it happens less, but it happens differently. I mean, there are still probably some monsters out there doing monstrous shit and getting away with it because of power, but it's just, it's more nuanced. I mean, if you look at people you look at a Playboy magazine from the 1960s, half of the jokes are about incidents that we would consider sexual abuse or even rape. Like the half of the jokes in a Playboy magazine, or maybe a third of them, were like the co-ed, the young female student, walking, she's all tousled, and her shirt is undone, and she's obviously just had sex, and and the punchline, she's walking out of the professor's office, and she's saying, she's all happy and talking to her female friend, like, well, yeah, well, I got that A or something. I mean, it would be a better punchline than that, but the idea was that she just went along with sexual abuse, coercion, and everybody's cool with it. And haha, it's a joke. And that's just no longer the case.
Well, maybe we just switch directions, because I can name, and I know you and Lance like to talk around political conversations, but I can name at least 2 or 3 people that have used their power of coercion and have done it in the political landscape and everything, because there are definitely accusations out there, and there have been quotes out there about things that Trump has said about beauty pageants and other things, and we definitely know that Bill Clinton used all kinds of coercion with the whole Monica Lewinsky thing, and there are a number of other cases from both Democrats and Republicans. So maybe it's less of it going on in Hollywood and more of it going on in the corridors of DC. Is that a possibility, Lance? So you think maybe our politicians have switched off and they're the ones that are the corrupt ones now in that lane and everything? Because when I hear of it now, it is less in the entertainment lane and more in the political lane, and it's on both the Republican and the Democrat side.
All right, and the one thing about politics is the current office holders are old on average. I don't know about on average, but there are plenty of old, there are plenty of senators and congressmen in their 70s and 80s. Not plenty, but dozens and dozens. And I think blatant sexual coercion is, I would hope, more common among that generation than younger generations for a couple reasons. One, there's more sexual literacy. 2 is there's a freaking mountain of porn out there, where one of Adam Carolla's jokes is that there was so little porn that his grandpa had to lie on a grassy hill and masturbate to clouds that had sexy shapes. So,
do you know what one of the biggest porn or tools of sexuality was in the African American community for decades and everything? Do you know what one of the biggest tools was in that space?
No.
Jet magazine. Jet magazine had a cover in the middle, but it was not a nude cover. It was usually some scantily clad woman, and I can tell you that there were probably many a African American man or in some cases maybe an African American woman that was having lustful thoughts around those particular pictures, because it was literally the centerfold in the magazine. But it was usually it would be a series of news shots, and then somewhere in the middle of the news shot would be the scantily clad woman.
It's crazy. If you look back at old Ice Capades, I don't know if people even know what that is anymore. It was a skating show. It was people, figure skating.
Mm-hmm.
It was family entertainment in the 50s and the 60s. And if you look at the programs, it's obvious that this was one of the things that the dads would jack off to later, because the programs had a sexy figure skater in some weird skating position that was also a salacious position. And
I'm sure they did it with Life magazine as well, because Life magazine had some very salacious pictures.
The stuff that people had to use to beat off back then was like 1% as filthy as the stuff that we have today. and also there was just much less of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey, Lance, we said we were going to get to regrets earlier, and I'm going to mention a regret of mine and everything. And I want to hear if maybe it's one of your regrets. I'm not sure where Rick was going with his regret and everything, but and about to be 61, and I'm not saying that I can't find a younger woman and still have children or even adopt some children or something along those lines. But I do have my two nephews, and I love and adore them dearly and everything. But if there is a regret, it is that I have not found the woman of my lifelong partnership as of yet, and therefore there have been no kids and all in that space. And as I recall, you also are not married. I can't remember if you have kids or not. So I was wondering, is that one of your regrets, or did you always knew that you were not going to bring kids into this crazy world and everything? Because if I have any regret, it's certain women that I miss. Like, there's the ones that you're like, I should have dated that, but my friends told me that there was no way that they were going to go for me for whatever reasons, and then you later find out that they had an interest in you as well. But by then they've gotten married or had their own kids and everything in that space. So is that a similar style of regret? And I just spilled my soul and told you some of my regrets, but is that similar to you, Lance?
Mark, you regret not having kids. It's hard for me to hear you, but is that?
Yeah, not having kids and not having a significant other, not having a wife. And I know Rick's got a wife and everything, but not having that person in the house. Because right now I'm in my apartment, and like I said, I'll go to bed alone later on tonight after we're done with this show and everything.
You say you live with someone in your apartment?
I do not. I do not.
Okay. Well, yeah. No, I don't regret not having kids because I don't really have much interest in children. But I would love to have gotten married. It just when you're flat broke your whole life, you're not very desirable, I find. The field that I chose of trying to make a living selling oil paintings was really, I chose that in the 70s when we thought that women were going to love you for the beauty of your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a cliche.
It turns out that you have to be able to make a good living, at least in my experience. Besides, maybe there are other things that are unacceptable about me, but I do think that the choice of career is what held me back in that regard, because nobody wants to be with somebody that's flat broke at the age of 55. You know what I mean?
No, I definitely can relate to you on that and everything. And you bring up the notion of materialism, and there are some women out there that are very career oriented, and there's nothing wrong with that. I have some friends of mine that are very career oriented, but you've also got some women out there that are still stuck on that materialism kind of goal. So if you don't have the quote unquote right car or the right house, so they might be going like, hey, really cool studio that you've got here. Now, where's the rest of the house? And all in that space, because I know in LA there is definitely some materialistic folks, just as that's one of the stereotypes. So I'm wondering, is that something you ran across, even Rick, before you ran across your lovely wife and all in that space?
I didn't move to LA until I had already been with her for years. And I mean, you can be concerned about, I mean, LA is an expensive city, and you need a car, and real estate is, you don't have to be materialistic to be in LA to be concerned about material things.
Right.
Yeah. The truth is that if you're not making $100,000 a year, if you're not in the upper 5% of incomes in the United States, you can't survive in LA. You can't have a family unless your wife works too. But
I'm not even sure you can survive in other parts of the world. I was talking, one of the places I work at is a cultural centers, the same places I mentioned that Bernie will be at on Thursday and everything. But one of those things that I was talking to is the yoga teacher, because there's a yoga teacher. She's actually going to go to Costa Rica, I think, for a tour of that area and everything, and I think next month or sometime in July. But in talking to her, even here in North Carolina, her rent is going up. So she's going to have to find a new place to rent. Because I think the rule, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lance and Rick, but I think the rule was that you're not supposed to pay more than 20% of your
30%.
expenses, and it's 30%. That was like somewhere around 20 to 30% in your rent and everything. But she was in a 3-bedroom apartment because she does have, I think, a child and a significant other and all in that kind of way. But her rent is going up from $1,750 to $2,500. So 2,500 times 12, that's going to be like at least $30,000 that you've got to pay in rent and everything. So that is, if we're talking 20%, 1/5 of 30,000 means she needs to be making $150,000, which she's not making as a yoga instructor. I forgot what her other job is, but I guarantee you she's not making that in either of those jobs.
You're not supposed to pay more than 30% of your income for rent.
Right.
$2,500 a year is $30,000. $2,500 a month is $30,000 a year, which is
Right.
30% of $100,000.
Right. So she's supposed to be making $100,000, which she's not making nowhere near that. I can guarantee you that.
So, but back to why I hope that younger generations are going to be less rapey than older generations. A ton of porn. So if you need to, ejaculate, you can look at just mountains of porn. 2 is the de-emphasis on sex. As more and more things become more distracting and awesome. I think I said it last week, which is that the 70s sucked. Entertainment was generally bad. Food was bad. Clothing, everything was just kind of meh, except if you were cool enough to have sex.
If it sucked, why did it get its own TV show? Because there is that show called The 70s Show. I only saw it like 3 or 4 times, but apparently there was a whole show based on the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, but those people were all. It's frickin' Ashton Kutcher. He played an idiot, but I would assume that I haven't watched much of that show. I assume that he occasionally got laid on that show. But anyway, there's more. Life is more distracting and awesome in ways beyond sex compared to 50 years ago. So we know that teens are having 25% less sex than the teens of 30, 40, 50 years ago. There's just a bunch of other stuff going on. Also, in the past 50 years, people have, the average American is much less in shape than they used. There's more tolerance of different body types. And so, like, I see couples, I was never cool enough to have a girlfriend in high school. But I see couples all over, young teen couples all over the place. I don't go out that much, but when I'm out, where I might see teen couples, I see couples that would never have been couples 50 years ago because neither of them would have been cool and attractive enough to get a partner. And that has changed. So it's easier for people, I think, to hook up if they want to hook up. Also, people are more knowledgeable. Like, my friends and I were just idiots, just totally underinformed because we didn't have the internet. Also, we didn't have the internet to help us hook up. You had to go to bars, which you couldn't even do if you were under 21, except for crappy beer-only 18 bars. But, I mean, if you're not cool at school, you're not going to be cool in a bar. So anyway.
I hear you, but there are all those new tools. My brother actually met his other half on eHarmony. I've had some friends that have been successful on Tinder and some of the other sources out there, even though apparently the different ones have different kinds of functions and everything. I understand, Lance, you'll be glad to know this. I did look at it at one time, even though I didn't do the whole pursuit of all in that kind of way. But there are even sites that you can find that millionaire woman for you and everything. So while you're the poor artist, there is a site called millionairematch.com that claims that will help you find a millionaire that will back your art. So I was just wondering, Lance, have you done any of that online dating, and have you explored this as a way to get the date of the woman of your dreams that will put up with that poverty mindset that many of us artists have? And I consider myself an artist as well.
I personally would never have no interest whatsoever in how much money my partner has. I don't care if they're broke or if they have $1 billion. I'm really only interested in boobs. So very principled about that. But as far as dating sites, I believe they're mainly for women.
They're all bait and switch. What Lance is getting to.
Well, let me get to what I'm getting to. Basically, there's only one kind of guy I've ever seen that gets anywhere on a dating site, and that's a guy that could literally be a male model. Like if he's movie star level good looks, he does okay on dating sites. But basically, you're putting yourself on a catalog for women to go through because somehow they have control over it, and they just pick out the best 5% of us. So it's not a good thing. Also, they make you reveal a lot of things about yourself that aren't that attractive. So I haven't tried those. What were you going to say, Rick?
Dating sites are A, bait and switch, because they are B, sausage parties. Heavily, the sites that promise women to guys are mostly BS. I mean, like Russian, Ukrainian brides, any of those foreign, there's a lot of fraud that goes. Like my kid lives in England, and sometimes we have to wire her money for college expenses, and when you send a foreign wire, there's a disclaimer that they want you to read that includes the warning against like foreign bride stuff. It's such a common scam that some huge percentage of wire transfers are lonely, maladjusted American guys being scammed.
I can definitely believe that. It's almost time for another commercial break and everything, so we're going to take that and all along the lines. By the way, Lance, I hate to tell you this, but I do understand that there was going to be a plan for Rick to set up a Tinder page or a OnlyFans page just strictly for you to find that woman of your life. So we're gonna have to scratch that plan, Rick, and everything. I know that was the grand plan that we had and everything, but it's not gonna work. Lance is not gonna go for it, so we'll have to find it the old-fashioned way and all along those lines. But right now, speaking of exercise, we're gonna hear about that work that thing supplement and maybe a couple of other things all along those lines. And then when I come back, I've got a question for Rick about his daughter and everything, because I'm thinking that he is one of those hardline dads, but we're going to find out when we come back.
All right.
Recognize the excuses are not valid. They're conjured up, they're fabricated, they're lies. And how do you stop the lies? You stop the lies with the truth. And the truth is, you have time. You have the skill, you have the knowledge and the support and the willpower and the discipline to get it done.
The fruit of everything good in life begins with a challenge. Everything is uphill this world. And it's not going to come to you, and it's not going to fall in your lap, and it's not going to be something that, oh my God, it just was so simple. It's always going to be difficult.
This is your time to get what you want. Go work that thing with Work That Thing supplements.
Mija. Talk to me.
It's nothing.
Please.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I have to go.
Isa.
Richard, how you doing?
Ahoy, Jennifer. Lovely to see you. I'm so excited we're partnering on Virgin Voyages.
Yeah, I'm really excited too, but I was thinking that maybe before we announce it, that we should decide on my official title at Virgin Voyages.
Yes, and I already have a few options for you.
Okay.
What about something catchy like, don't be fooled by the ship that I got. I'm now Jenny from the dock.
Okay.
Dame Jennifer Lopez.
Isn't there like a paperwork and like a sword involved?
Supreme Goddess of Mermaids.
You know what? Let's just tackle the title thing later. I'm just excited to share our gorgeous ships with the whole world.
Okay. Look, I'll brainstorm a little more and catch up soon on it. Mermaid in Manhattan?
So we're back, and we're back in the cabin conversation, and I think the painter has gone, but that's okay. We've got everybody else in the picture and all along those lines and everything. So I'm gonna actually ask Rick while we're waiting for Lance to get back and all in that space. There's Lance and all in that kind of way.
Regrets here.
Yep.
So I had an old school regret when I was a kid, which was 50 years ago. I wanted to get famous young so I could have a series of beautiful girlfriends, or even one, but really, that was back when, Playboy was rapey, and, I thought I'd get famous for doing something smart with my high IQ, which kind of hasn't happened yet, and time is running out, but I thought, I'd live in LA with a Playboy bunny or Playboy playmate girlfriend, and we'd go to parties in a helicopter. Like I said, it was the 70s. I was dumb. All my friends were dumb. But it's a little late to regret not having had more girlfriends. And what I didn't realize, Lance, I'll ask you if you think most people realize, like my dumb friends and I think kind of universally believed that when we found the one, the beating off would stop. And I would say that, one of the lessons of male adulthood is just to realize that unless you're wildly lucky or a monster like Harvey Weinstein or Cosby, or who else is rapey? Not you. I'm asking for other examples. I mean, Trump is like, but Trump's like sexual assaults were never even about jizzing. They were all like feeling people up and forcing his tongue down, and just like, it was all just like grabbing people because it was more a power thing. It seems
If
like.
you bring Trump up, I have to intercede.
Well, you don't think that the two
I don't
dozen
think Trump raped anybody.
Well, I'm okay. So, I believe E. Jean Carroll.
You know, if it's not, basically you don't know anything if the subject isn't masturbation. That's the only subject that you really understand.
Well, let me get to my point, which is that one of the things that men have to come to terms with is that, unless you have a super low sex drive, you're gonna, keep beating off, and this is probably true for most women too. That being married or being in a relationship doesn't end that.
Some of my women friends tell me that when they hit menopause, that their desires actually go through the roof. I don't know if Lance has heard that, but I've definitely heard that there are some women, because they are less concerned about the dangers of getting pregnant. So I do know that there is a time frame where their libido is very low, but I've heard from several lady friends that after they go through that time frame, then they kind of like go off the rails in terms of their sexuality, because they are not necessarily worried about any sort of kids being involved. Of course, they still are concerned about diseases and things in that kind of space, but they are not as easily concerned about there being a child born. And you had earlier when we were talking about children, you had mentioned the fact of some of these older guys that are in Hollywood that are having these younger ladies and everything. As I recall, there's a couple of them, including some recently. I want to say one of the Douglases, like maybe
Right, so like
just had a baby at like 70.
Like Bill Clinton, you get the idea. Well, I don't know. I saw the particulars. They made that series that kind of laid out how it worked with Monica Lewinsky in more detail, and I don't know that he was a pure sexual predator there, but he certainly felt entitled to have sex with her. And I would think that, I would think that Clinton's thinking was, I'm the most powerful. I've got all these responsibilities. I deserve to, follow my, I deserve this little bit of relief in my life. And which is, his behavior screwed up the whole 21st century for the US and to some extent the world, because it led to Gore not getting elected, Bush getting elected, which led to the second Gulf War, which was bad, and destabilized the Mideast, all because Bill Clinton had to ejaculate. And that sense of entitlement, I think, is something that guys need to be educated out of. That you're not going to have, you shouldn't expect to have all your sexual desires met by the world. You're going to, you're sad 15-year-old kid who's jerking off 10 times a week. Well, you're going to eventually meet somebody if you want to. Most likely you'll get married, but you'll still probably jerk off a few times a week, because just that's the way things go. And the people who don't, like Elvis was incredibly lucky, or the people like, Weinstein are monsters. So if you're not lucky or a monster, then you just have to temper your sexual expectation.
And speaking of tempering expectations, I'm probably going to get us into all kinds of trouble here, including some of the folks that are watching. But I'm going to tease Lance and everything because I'm thinking that there is nothing going on when you are painting the male models. But I have seen in the back of the studios that there are some female models, and I imagine that some of these female models are quite attractive and quite appealing and everything. So, and you seem to be, despite the different views that you have from Rick and everything, a very ethical and very wonderful person. So I don't see that you would be cracking on these models, and if I can use that kind of terminology. But I'm thinking there are times that you are thinking to yourself, "Daggone, I wish this wasn't my model," because I definitely would love to go out on a date with this young lady. But I'm thinking that you are more ethical than that, so therefore you don't necessarily make that play on the models when they are there and everything. So am I reading you correctly? Because I'm thinking there are some models that have stepped into the office and you're going like, wow, this is a Pam Grier-like model and everything. And I'm using
that's kind of out of bounds.
No, I can answer that question.
Okay.
All right. So this is the way it works, Mark. Half of the paintings I do and sculptures I do are females.
Right.
And female nudes. And the way it works is this. If you worked at a bank, you were a bank teller. Some of the bank tellers would be males and some of them would be females.
Exactly.
Sometimes the bank tellers start having lunch together and sometimes they go out. So it's the same with anyone you work with. Like you don't when I hire a model to do a painting, it's to do a painting. And 99% of the time they're married and they're not the slightest bit interested in me anyway. But I don't have a rule that if me and the model like each other, we can't go out. So it's like any job you have. You sometimes date your coworkers.
Well, yeah, you definitely do that, because I can even say that there have been cases, there is a terminology that is used quite often in life and everything, and we joke about it, but I have at least, like I said, I've never been married, but I have at least one or two what are termed work wives. So they are women that I have a great deal of respect for. They have a great deal of respect for me. In most of the cases, I even know their husbands as well, but we will sit there and have fun and make what some people might consider flirty conversations, but folks know that there is not going to go anywhere because we have respect for each other and all along those lines. So the work wife is a real thing. So I hear what you're saying in that space. I'm sure you even had work wives in your job, Rick and everything.
I can give you my input.
Okay.
You know, as a younger man, I decided to take on jobs where I'd been lifting weights for a while. I thought I looked decent naked, except for my legs, which have varicose veins, but I could always wear socks. Unless Lance would yell at me for denying his students that part of my leg. But I had jobs, stripper, art model. So I've been naked in public about 1,450 times. And almost never did it lead to anything. Because you still have to have game as a male, whether you're naked or not. Whether you've got nice pecs or not. And I just generally don't have game.
No,
in modern terms, we'd say I'm on the spectrum. I'm somewhat awkward. I'm less awkward now because I'm old now and I've been working in Hollywood among very smooth operators for decades. And I worked in bars for decades, so I met 750,000 people. So I'm less awkward than I was. But my game was bad. And so even being naked, not much would happen. And we have a woman in the studio in the background, and she said during break, she said that women aren't attracted via their eyes, they're attracted via their ears, meaning it's what you say. Right. It's not how you look. And that was borne out by my, sad history as a nude boy.
Well, speaking of game and everything, one of the things that I observed is I have a good friend of mine who I think is out in LA now, but he is a musician, and I think he's either with his second or third wife. But one of the things that they used to enjoy doing as a couple activity was literally doing what you were part of. They enjoyed going to the strip club, and they did not necessarily, have a lot of overly action with the strippers, but as he told me, it definitely made it very rewarding when they got back home because they were both there together and everything. So I was just wondering if that's something you observed in your stripper days, where couples would come and it would be almost a tool of foreplay, because that's what it seemed to me that it was in their particular case. And I actually have another friend that has a couple that are strippers. I won't say that he may be the manager and she's the stripper, but they are definitely in that stripping lane and everything in that kind of way. But I've definitely heard folks that have gone to strip clubs because it's a form of foreplay.
I didn't observe much because I was a crappy stripper. I was not Todd the Bod. Todd the Bod did really well at PT's Show Club in Denver, Colorado. Because, he was like 6'4", and he was, he was good looking. He had a tan. He knew how to talk to women. I think he had 4 kids by 4 different women and was still out there stripping. But like some of the places I worked were like hellholes, like the Colorado Coal Company. And that place was the strip club. This was back before people had tattoos for the most part. And if you had a tattoo, you couldn't work at the bus stop, which was Boulder's better strip joint. And so all these problem people came to strip at the coal company, and they were mostly terrifying. And there wasn't a lot of couples action that I noticed. They did, after a while, start doing co-ed nights where there'd be nude guys on one stage and nude women on another stage, which was great for people because guys who liked guys could sit at the women's stage and just crank their heads around, and I guess vice versa.
What kind of women were going to strip clubs? I've never heard of such a thing.
Like, I don't know. I remember one woman was like, she had a voice like she smoked 80 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
And she sat there like this, and I'm wagging my thing at her. She goes, "How'd you like to stuff that down my throat?" And my thought was, really not so much.
Now, hold on a second. Lance, you're saying you've never heard of women going to strip clubs? Because I've definitely heard of women going to strip clubs.
As our female off-camera guest has said, women are, it was established by Kinsey in the 50s that women are less visual in what attracts them sexually. So women will go to a strip club, and there's another dynamic, but women will not fantasize about taking a guy home because strippers are not, they're not guys who make $250,000 a year. They may work construction a woman's not interested in taking a male stripper home because she already has a loser at home. So,
but I guess the question I've got to ask both of you, and if the woman off on this side wants to answer this, is that if you look at magazines, and you mentioned the magazines, and if you look at the stuff that's online, there is a large population of folks that are in the swinger community in the United States and worldwide. And quite a few of those are actually women. So what is the appeal of women to the swinger society? Because I can tell you that there are a number of women that are in that swinger society. Actually, I think I mentioned it. I might have mentioned it on another show, or I might have mentioned it on this one before, but I went to a country club, and at that country club, there were 3 separate parties. There was the guys coming back from the military, and I think it was the Iraq War. There was the bridal shower, and there was the swinger club party. And the swinger club party was majority women, and they were there for whatever their swinging activities were and everything. I think I even remember vaguely some of the names of those women and everything. But I was just wondering your thoughts as to why there is this large women population, and maybe the lady off on the side has some thoughts as well.
I don't know much about swingers. I only worked like one I was a bouncer at a swingery party, and really the only thing I did all night was tell this one guy to keep telling this one guy to tuck his junk back into his loincloth. I don't know. I for all the sexual acting out I tried to do, I observed and learned just very little.
Yeah. Hey, Lance, you got any thoughts on that? And the other question I was curious about in that same line is soulmates, because definitely Rick alluded to it, that he found his soulmate and everything, and that he was going to find this Playboy bunny woman back when he was a young, foolish teenager and all in that kind of space. But I've heard many a person talk about this notion of there's a term that has flame, the twin flame, or the soulmate. And some people say that you only get one in your life, whereas other people say you get multitude of them and everything. And I'm actually of the belief that in the multitude category, but I was wondering your thoughts.
Well, for one thing, there are 8 billion people on Earth now. So if there was only one soulmate for somebody back when the population was only 1 billion, 150 years ago, there would be 8 soulmates for people now. And every once in a while, you'll see some weird, like, adjunct professor at some podunk university do some mathematical modeling and calculate that, there are actually, like, 120,000 potential soulmates out there in the world for you. And I'm more of that belief that there's not one person, there's a bunch of them. You just have to put yourself in a position to find somebody.
Yeah, I think you could fall in love several times in a lifetime. The idea of a soulmate implies that there is a spiritual law of some kind. It implies that there's a God. It implies that there are forces in the universe that are bringing order, and I don't think it's that orderly. I think that when it comes to spiritual matters, the patterns are not things that humans can see. So, in other words, if there is a God, and I think there is, he keeps you guessing. So I don't think God would create a world where there was a soulmate for you. But I do think that God influences your romantic life, of course, in the same way that he influences everything else. So my point is this. I think even if there was a spiritual world and you were a very spiritual person, spiritual people are surprised all the time. To an atheist is used to life being chaotic, because the atheist thinks that anything can happen. There are no spiritual rules taking place. There's no karma. There's no destiny. But if a person is spiritual, they're always on the verge of thinking they understand life. And then I think they get surprised. So a lot of spiritual people think that they're waiting for a soulmate. And I think some of them will find the soulmate, and some of them never will. And it's important not to presume on God. It's important not to presume that you understand what's going to happen, or that there's some kind of order to your destiny.
So let me talk about my personal history.
Mm-hmm.
My maternal grandparents seemed to be made for each other, kind of soulmates. But in their own quiet way, they were each pretty hot. For a pharmacist and his wife, they were pretty smoking. They were good-looking people, which always helps. There've been a lot of people in my family who've been better looking than I am, which kind of pisses me off. My dad, in his prime years, once he got over being zitty in high school, he was a good-looking guy. He was in uniform. He was a navigator bombardier on a B-36, during the early 50s flying nukes around. And my mom saw him at the Albuquerque Officers Club, and it was love at first sight. I've put his picture up on Historical Hotties on Twitter a couple times. Yeah, he does well.
Wait a minute, there's a Twitter site called Historical Hotties?
I don't know, there's a category. I don't know if it's a hashtag or I don't know what, but I put up my dad, I mean, it's a hashtag. Throw up my dad in uniform and they're here, you know, on Veterans Day. And he gets a lot of clicks.
I'll have to see if my dad can get on that, because my dad was a tennis player, and actually folks still think of him as being more like my brother than my dad, even though he's in his early 80s and all in that space. So he is still looking quite good. And by the way, he's an artist, Lance, and all in that space. So he has that going for him also, because he is definitely in that art lane, but he's also a retired college professor and had a number of other things, including civil rights and things like that. He actually played against Arthur Ashe when they were teenagers or maybe preteens and all that. And he likes to jokingly say, Arthur, you know, basically scrubbed his ass, but at least they got to say that he played them and all in that space before Arthur became known as the legend that he is and all in that kind of way. Hey, Rick, question I had that I'm still going to get to earlier, I'm going to get to it now, is are you the difficult dad? And Lance has known you for a while, so maybe he would know as well. So if your daughter, who is over there overseas, comes and brings you this young, hot man that is trying to chase her down and court her and all of that, are you the dad that is going to be standing there very stern and disciplined and basically saying that there's no way you are getting next to my daughter unless I approve it and everything? Or are you the more liberal dad?
I trust my daughter's judgment. She's like, I don't know, she's always like exhibited like reasonable behavior. You know, a lot of like acting out. I mean, she hasn't done a lot of acting out. Some of her friends we've seen, you know, like, I don't know, she's just, I don't know, she's.
What were her SAT scores?
I don't know. I don't know if I should share them.
Well, she's his daughter. Probably the most rebellious thing she ever did was get a B. Did she get a B?
Yeah, she got B's.
All right.
But no, I mean, she wasn't like a. I mean, getting into college now, being in trying to aspire to, you know, the elite universities entails so much bullshit now. It's insane. Like, she took differential equations in high school, which is like, when I went to college, that was 4th semester math. It took 3 semesters of calculus and then differential equations, which I never passed.
Wow.
It's like it was, she just met the demands of the current set of absurd requirements for, you know, trying to get into these schools.
Hold on a second. Roll back, rewind, because people are going to be listening to this and they're going to be going there and they're going to be like, let me get this straight. The gentleman that is one of the top people in Mensa and everything, who had definitely challenged a game show and is definitely considered one of the elite in terms of intelligence, actually did not pass some courses. Is that what I heard you say? Because I'm sure some people that are actually going to be watching this going like, wait a minute, I thought that this was one of the most intelligent men in the United States and definitely in the world, and he just said that he didn't pass courses.
So before I scrubbed my transcript by going to a college that let you do that, I transferred to a college, and one of the college's rules was like, just take the credits that you like with you and just leave the ones you don't like behind. Until I did that, I had a year's worth of F's from courses that I just simply quit going to because they were too big a pain in the ass for me. And that was differential equations several times. Later, it was group theory. If one time I quit going to a class because A, it was hard, and B, the teacher told me to stop chewing gum. I quit going to classes because they were at 8 in the morning, and I'd work in bars until 2 a.m. the night before. I was a terrible, terrible student. But my kid hired me to get her good at the SAT. So I made her take 80 practice tests before she fired me. But by the time she fired me, she was frickin' good at the SAT.
She probably did well at the SAT. Hey, Lance, there are some people out there along those same lines that y'all have gone back and forth on these episodes, and definitely when y'all were doing it before on Facebook and everything. And there are probably some people that when they hear about Rick's background are intimidated and won't engage him in conversation because they are afraid to engage him in debate because they're afraid that he will be intellectually superior to them. But that does not seem to be an issue with you, and I don't know what your own grades were like. So at what point did you realize that you could go head to head with one of the quote unquote smartest people in the world and everything? So at what point did you realize that you didn't have to agree with him, and there would be times that y'all totally disagreed and that you didn't mind having intellectual conversations with him?
I'll tell you an interesting thing about that. I listen to, while I'm working, it's quiet. There's nothing for me to do but listen. So I listen to the news all day, and I listen to half a dozen news programs from, different points of view, different conservatives generally. And what I have found is that if you're careful and you pay attention and you really listen and you really read, you could end up knowing as much as the commentators on Fox or CNN. It's the same information. Very, very few people bring to it a special knowledge that you're not capable of understanding. For one thing, the only thing that I find is new to me is legal aspects of a situation. Like I don't know the laws in Florida or the laws in New York, but in general, the subjects that are going on right now, you could understand it, and you don't need to be you don't need a PhD in history or international relations.
So I'll tell you what's intimidating. Listening to us, you can tell that we're not professional speakers. We're okay, but the guys who are intimidating are radio guys. We know Carolla, and regardless of what you think of his politics, that guy can assemble his thoughts into coherent, funny passages just on the spur of the moment, as well as Kimmel, who was my boss for a long time. Guys who were trained in radio and who have that kind of mind can just spit out well-formed sentences one after another, can come up with jokes while they're talking. And that, with Carolla, you don't try to you mostly just want to sit back and let him talk.
When he has a comedian on, like every time he does a show, he has a comedian with him. He's funnier than the comedians he has that are doing nothing but stand-up all day, and he's not doing that much.
It's radio. It's usually having the brain for it.
All right,
we got a break in a second, but it's having the brain for radio and having been on radio, because any dead air when you're on radio makes you sound dumb, right?
All right, I think we're breaking.
Yeah, taking a break.
One of the things that business owners forget a lot is to prepare for their own retirement.
Hi, my name's Nick Palavita, and today I'm with a very special guest, a certified financial planner, a chartered retirement plan specialist, and president of National Pension Partners, Max Couliet. Max, tell me what you do at National Pension Partners.
Well, Nick, we help successful small businesses and professionals put together retirement plans that provide them the maximum retirement benefits and big tax deductions at the same time.
Well, how do you do this?
Well, we get on an internet conferencing system with the client. We review their goals, what they want to accomplish, and then put together strategies to help them in implementing a retirement plan that benefits them, not everybody else.
Well, that sounds really good, but how much does this cost?
Well, it's really not bad because the first consultation is free. That allows us to go through and discover whether this strategy works for that business and for you as the business owner, and helping you maximize your retirement.
Well, Max, how do we get this free appointment?
It's really pretty simple, Nick. You can either go to our website below or call us at 877-252-1692, and then we can set up a time with either myself, Nick, or one of our other retirement plan specialists, another CPA or advisor in the office, to go over this with you and make sure it fits for you.
Hi, my name is Lewis Haupt. I work with National Pension Partners, and I work with businesses to allow them to put the maximum away that they can for themselves and to save taxes.
Hi, I'm Brad Coyle, and I'm the brokerage manager at National Pension Partners. We're always analyzing plan fund choices in order to ensure the participant's success.
If you want more information on how we can help you and your business put more money away in a retirement plan than you ever thought possible, contact us at the website below or call us at 877-252-1692.
Hi, my name is Kim Green, and I am one of the founders of Black, Bases Loaded, Authentic Clothing and Caps, spelled with a K. We have the distinct pleasure every day of introducing the world to people that have had a tremendous impact on our country. In doing so, we're allowing the accomplishments of these groups to both be celebrated and acknowledged, while our customers are provided the opportunity to commemorate them with high quality and stylish attire. Black specializes in licensed apparel for Negro League Baseball, Buffalo Soldiers, and the Tuskegee Airmen. We started Black to act as an educational partner to museums nationwide to not only inform everyday Americans on Black history, but to celebrate the individuals that played on segregated sports teams and served in segregated units of the military. The problem we're solving is twofold. One, Black history, which is American history, has been excluded from the core curriculum in our children's schools. And two, when we started the company, it was and really still is hard to find high quality Black history apparel. Our goal is to change both of those things.
What has time told you about the power of friendship in your life? Hi, I'm Trevi A. McDonald, author of the novel Time Will Tell, a coming-of-age story about the power of friendship in the lives of 3 Chicago women who are attending their 10-year high school reunion, and the sequel, Roundabout Midnight, a story about resolving issues, healing hurts, and celebrating Black love. You can find out more about my books at my website, www.drtrevi.com. Thank you.
And we're back.
All right, I hear music.
Everybody's back in their positions and all of that. We're back.
All right, so here, let me finish my regrets.
Yes.
So, I have a theory of the universe that I think is pretty good. It's based on the universe being an information processor, which is not an uncommon point of view among like cosmologists, physicists. Quantum mechanics is basically a theory of incomplete information, how particles move in a world where they're not, where their natures are incompletely defined. And I believe, I won't go into the specifics, but I believe that the universe is much, much older than the roughly 14 billion years that it appears to be. And there's an easy way to prove or disprove what I think. At least I think there's a bunch of stuff in the universe that is older than the universe appears to be. That there are probably brown dwarfs, there's probably more of the element gold. It's tough to make gold. Gold has, I forget how many protons and neutrons in the nucleus, But to make a nucleus, a heavy ass nucleus, fusion has to happen. You start with hydrogen, and after I don't believe in one big bang. I believe in kind of a rolling bang, but you start with mostly hydrogen, some helium, and in stars, that stuff gets cooked down into the heavier elements. But you can't cook an element heavier than iron inside a normal star. You need there to be an explosion, a nova or a supernova, or some other cataclysmic thing to cook iron or other heavier elements into the super heavy elements like gold. And if you survey, so it's gold should be super rare, and it is, but it's apparently, maybe according to some models of the universe, gold is a lot less rare than it should be, and it's an anomaly according to current theories. And so there's a possibility that the gold in the universe was formed some of the gold in the universe was formed more than 14 billion years ago. And if not gold, then other stuff like these burnt out stars. So one of my major regrets is that I've been so freaking lazy for my whole life that I've got this theory that's not entirely undeveloped, but it's mostly undeveloped. It's mostly arm waving, the way I just did. And if I'd been less lazy, I think the theory would be further along and would have been more examined to see if it's got any legitimacy.
So you're saying that you should have been the next Carl Sagan, because he definitely had some interesting theories and all along those lines, but you have not developed this theory further enough to figure out whether your theories are as equal to Carl Sagan as some of the other like that.
Sagan was a popularizer. I think he probably had some theories, but I don't know what his theories. I'd like to, everybody wants to be Einstein.
Right.
And me too. But Einstein talked about Sitzfleisch, which is German for sitting flesh, which is just the ability to sit your butt down and work on a theory for day after day, hour after hour, which is ironic because frickin' Einstein had a stand-up job at the Swiss Patent Office. He stood at a lectern all day, and that's where he wrote some of his most famous papers in his spare time between his patent work. So he talked about sitting flesh, but he did all his theorizing standing up.
Is that where he actually? Because if I remember correctly, y'all mentioned Putin earlier in this show and everything. People are concerned that he might press the nuclear button, and as I recall, Einstein was one of the folks involved with the nuclear war and nuclear bombs, and he actually had regrets about that in his later life.
Yeah, he did, because people who understood nuclear fission and fusion, which was just a new science in the 20s and 30s, began to realize that, you could build a nuclear weapon. And a guy named Leo Szilard, I'm probably mispronouncing his name, went to Einstein and said, you're the guy we think Germany could develop a nuclear weapon. And so, Einstein had the juice, the famousness to get in to see FDR. And he met with FDR, or maybe just sent him a letter and said, we think Germany, we need to beat Germany to build a nuclear bomb, and that led to the Manhattan Project.
Right.
And it turned out, Hitler's Germany was a crap place for scientists. All the Jewish ones got chased out or worse, and a lot of the just non-Jewish scientists didn't want to go along. Anyway, their nuclear program was sucky and it didn't get anywhere.
Yeah, definitely didn't get anywhere. Hey, Lance, one of the things that I'm hearing Rick say and everything, and it's a conversation we hear even in the relationship space, but it seems to me that Rick is saying that the universe is a quote unquote, and I'm not nearly the comedian of Jimmy Kimmel, but a quote unquote old soul, because we definitely hear people oftentimes talk about old souls among individuals. So you'll have the person that is 20 or 30, but they have like the mentality or the knowledge of somebody that is 50 or 60, and they will swear up and down that they are old souls and that they have an older soul than their chronological age. So as one in the art space, what is your thoughts around old souls? Is that just a wives' tale, or are there actually people that are actual old souls that maybe when they were 15 or 20 had this mindset of somebody that was 40 or 50?
I'll ask you a question that's parallel to that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel any smarter at your age now than you did 30 years ago? Wiser?
Yeah. Okay. So those are two different questions. The first is there such a thing as a spiritual old soul? That is a soul that has been reincarnated many times. And if you believe in reincarnation, then you will believe that some souls are incarnated more than others and are wiser. But your question was, do you think you're wiser now than you were 30 years ago? I would say every single human being on the planet believes that they're wiser than they were when they were younger. But I have to say this, it's very difficult to know if you would have done anything different. I mean, whenever I look back on my past, since we're dealing with regrets, I think to myself, well, I wish I hadn't done that, but under the circumstances, I didn't know any better. I thought I was doing the best I could.
I hate under the circumstances because I do a lot of thinking about what I would, and I've actually redone stuff that other people have not. I went back to high school several times to try to get high school right. Well, the first time I went back to get it right. The other, I went back some other times for even more ridiculous reasons.
So you can't get high school right if you're going to high school in your 30s or 40s. So you go back in your maybe 18, 19s or 20s and get it right because you're close to
high school. I was 27 years old.
You were 27 at the first graduation, or the?
I graduated legitimately at 18, and then playing 18, I graduated again at 27.
Gotcha. Hey, Lance, is there any games or any things that are mind-oriented that you would be willing to challenge Rick on? Because I'm thinking that you do great well with going head-to-head in debates. You have your facts, he has his facts. Y'all disagree on facts, but I'm wondering whether you think that you would do well taking him on in a game of chess or Risk or some of those other games that are considered mind games and everything, even some of the ones that are on the phone and all in that kind of space. So is there a game that you think that you could take Rick on and win?
I don't I think Rick is smarter than me. I just so I'm not to me I don't feel like I'm challenging Rick. I think that what's happening is we come to the show with different information because he only listens to left-wing sources, and I generally listen to conservative sources.
But hold on, because I listen to less news than you do.
Yeah. So,
but I will turn on Fox from time to time.
All that we're doing, and all that we did when we had our political show was present each other's facts. In other words, to me, I'm not interested in having a debate or I'm not interested in somehow proving that I can match Rick. What I want to do is I want to present facts.
Lance wants to persuade you guys out there that his point of view, correct me if I'm wrong, is correct.
Well,
right?
ultimately, yeah, and it to me it doesn't. It's not a competition with Rick. It's like I presented last week that I thought that Biden had a miserable surrender in Afghanistan that would have led him to be driven from office. He should have resigned or been impeached in any other era. I think in the 1960s he would have been impeached. But
And then I want to,
but
counter that because I don't want.
But what I just want to point out, to me, that's a fact. To me, it doesn't. You don't have to be a genius at debating to see that what happened in Afghanistan was a disaster. There's no discussion of the facts. It was a disaster, and he was the president, and it was his fault. So my goal is simply to put that out there, and I don't have to be smarter than Rick. I don't have to be even as smart as Rick. It's, to me, the facts are incontrovertible.
But what happens between Lance and me, at least the way I see it, is I see it as the turd theory of news, where a situation like Afghanistan is a big, stinky, complicated turd. And conservative media picks out the peanuts from the turd and says, here's the deal. And Lance presents the peanuts. And liberal media picks out the corn from the turd and says, here's the deal. And that's what I present. So when Lance says it's all Biden's fault, I'll say, well, don't you think Biden was set up to fail the way Trump, negotiated this withdrawal with the Taliban, saying we're going to be out of there by, February of 2021, and releasing 5,000 Taliban prisoners, Pompeo meeting with the Taliban. And so that's my point of view, though Biden could have, on this, it wasn't, Trump, he screwed over Biden with his negotiations with the Taliban, but that didn't entirely obligate Biden to get out of Afghanistan. And in hindsight, maybe we would have been, or the world would have been better off if we'd left, if we kept having, the Afghan war was the longest war in U.S. history. So, we wanted out, but maybe we would have been better off just leaving 2,500 U.S. troops to hold Kabul indefinitely, if that's what it would have taken to at least maintain Kabul.
Yeah, so my question to you is, thank you for pointing that out. So my question to you, by the way, that was part of Trump's agreement. He was going to, for example, the largest air base in the world was in eastern Afghanistan. It was only a few hundred miles from China. So Biden gave that air base to basically the Chinese. So my question to you is this: knowing that he allowed this to happen, regardless of Trump, why do you still have confidence in Biden? Doesn't it shake don't you think that that's sort of a terrible mistake that led to thousands and thousands of deaths and incalculable suffering among the Afghan people, including the massive blow to the United States?
Which is the massive blow?
Well, the massive blow is by showing ourselves to be impotent and incompetent in Afghanistan. It gave Putin.
You mean the country that
It gave Putin the confidence that he could invade Ukraine and the U.S. would do nothing. And it's also why the Chinese have surrounded Taiwan.
I haven't seen that. I haven't thought about that parallel.
Well, it makes sense because.
It makes sense according to the people you listen to.
No, but in reality, Putin attacked Ukraine during the Obama administration and during the Biden administration.
And liberals,
but he did not attack the Ukraine during the Trump administration.
Yeah, because he was buddies with Trump. And why do your?
But why would he?
Why be
not? If he wanted to attack the Ukraine, why would being buddies with Trump prevent him?
because he was getting enough of what he wanted.
What did he want?
I
He was
don't know.
getting. You don't know.
I
Okay. Okay. So my point is, why is it that this doesn't make you lose confidence in Biden? Why do you still admire and respect him, given what's happened in international relations?
Because he's done a bunch of other stuff. He got the first Now you can criticize the infrastructure bill because as a conservative, you're going to say that the infrastructure bill contains a lot of stuff that's not infrastructure. I assume that's one of your arguments, right?
It's basically money for his buddies.
All right. See, so you're not going to give him credit for that, but I'm going to give him credit for that. This is the first infrastructure bill passed. Now, our bridges, all our infrastructure, bridges, roads, and all that stuff, there hasn't been a bill that got passed since December 2015 under Obama. So it was 7 years, and our bridges rank as deep. They're not structurally sound, and we needed that funding to work on the bridges. You may not approve of all of it. I'm sure there was a bunch of stuff for green energy that I'm sure you don't. But
I don't believe in climate change at all anymore.
So
I think every penny we spend on climate change, and now it's billions and billions and billions, is just graft. It's just politicians' buddies dividing up money, and it's ways that the politicians can pass laws to control us.
So you don't think climate change is happening?
I don't even think it's happening.
All right, well, see that. I don't want to have this argument now, but I mean that's just BS.
Hey, Lance, along those same questions, I did have a quick question for you because one of the things I hear that people talk about with the Ukraine situation is, I heard what you said about Obama, but some people also will put some blame on one of the Bushes because of what happened in Crimea and how he did not act quickly enough in that situation. So will you acknowledge that as well? But there might be some blame to be put on the Republican side, because I have heard that argument about Crimea and this being the precursor to what is going on in the Ukraine right now.
I don't remember. So I know that there was some fighting in the Crimea. If it happened during the Bush administration, that makes sense. I seem to recall that. But I'm not sure that there was a lot we could do in that situation.
Did
to
we
be
use
honest
a
with you.
camera?
Did we?
I think he bumped off the camera. I just happened to notice that. So yeah, maybe we'll go to commercial break and everything real quickly because something went on with the camera. I just noticed that just now. So we'll go to a quick commercial break while we have these quick adjustments.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kim Green, and I am one of the founders.
I'd like you to imagine with me, if you will, opening an app where you can collaborate with like-minded individuals from around the world, get inspiration and in-app tools to launch and grow your business, as well as share your knowledge and earn compensation, all in one app. Well, the name of that app is Truso, short for Truly Social. Hi, I'm Matthew Newman, the founder and CEO of Truso, a new concept in social media. Truso is designed from the ground up to be a platform that's both social and empowering for all its users. How exactly do we do that? I'm glad you asked. First, Truso brings the world together via video. Psychologists assert that video provides a significantly more effective connection than audio only. When you enter a community on Truso, you're face to face. Second, on Truso, you don't have to have 1 million followers to monetize. Our business model allows all hosts and moderators to monetize, no matter the size of your following, by 1, producing fee-based content, and 2, inviting others to join the platform as subscribers. Even more, Truso has an in-app resource library with over 100 free resources, forms, and documents to help you build your brand and grow your business. Third, Truso is inclusive. The deaf and hard of hearing communities make up 360 million people worldwide. Unlike audio-only apps, Truso embraces this community, providing a networking platform that allows them to participate via video and closed captioning. We even have a deaf and hard of hearing foundation in the works as well. Fourth, Trousseau is both social and safe. We refer to Trousseau as a virtual extension of the beauty shop, barbershop, and brainchild of the community. A place where there's laughter, along with wisdom, growth-oriented conversation, and genuine connections in a safe space. Trousseau even has proprietary security to ensure we maintain a safe environment for everyone. Where are we at now? Trousseau is live, y'all. We've launched in beta and we're acquiring users daily. We have an incredible development and marketing team, plus amazing celebrity influencers at the table, helping us spread the word around the globe, beginning within the African diaspora and beyond by creating a safe space for growth, connection, and collaboration. We're truly excited about Trousseau. We've created something special for which there is a global market. And we invite you to embark on this journey with us as a shareholder. The future for Trousseau is truly bright. Join us and let's go there together.
We're back and everybody's on camera and everything. So I do see everybody back on camera. That's a great thing. And all in that space. I know we're going to get to.
We lost camera at 18. Are we going to go another 12 to end this segment?
Yeah, we can go another 12 and end this segment. That'll work.
And all right, one more question for Mark, which is, this is going out live. When do we start having these put on in half-hour segments?
That's what I was just telling Lance earlier today. I've been cutting them so that it actually happened last week and it'll happen again this coming week because it generally takes me about 24 hours to cut them.
Okay. All right. I hope it's not too much work for you.
No, it's not much at all. There's a program called Clidio that I'm able to put it in there and then it gives me cut points and everything. So, and that's part of what the commercials are serving as is the points to cut it at. So it's actually the entire of the dialogue. If anything is cut, it's like the 5 seconds of the commercial and everything. So definitely it is easy to do that way.
Okay, good. And then you were answering.
Right.
Mark.
So you asked me a question about the
Crimea and Bush, because I had heard that was kind of the precursor to what is going on in Ukraine. The
Crimea fell under Obama. You were talking about the Azerbaijan, those little places, Chechnya, right? When Putin invaded those, and you were comparing it to the Ukraine situation. And there are a couple of big differences, 3 differences. The first is we actually had a treaty with the Ukraine that we made when the Soviet Union broke up. And the deal was that if the Ukraine would give up their nuclear weapons, we would somewhat guarantee their safety. So that treaty sort of involved us because they gave up their nuclear weapons. They kept their part of the bargain. The second difference is that the Ukraine war was somewhat preventable because Biden allowed the Nord Stream pipeline to go through. Now, he bombed it a few months ago.
Well, we don't know that.
But the thing is that when the Nord Stream pipeline went through the Baltic Sea, it made it so that Putin didn't need the Ukraine's cooperation anymore. See, the Russians were making a huge part of their economic power came from distributing natural resources, energy supplies through the Ukraine. And when Biden allowed the Nord Stream pipeline to go through to Germany, the Russians didn't need the Ukraine anymore to be cooperative. So it's one less reason to be respectful of them. The third difference is that there were several little wars that Russia had with Chechnya, Azerbaijan, but the difference is that the Ukraine had a year buildup there was almost a year of Russian forces building up along the Ukrainian border, and Biden did nothing. So
what was Biden supposed to do?
Biden was supposed to get in there, and he was supposed to say, look, he was supposed to threaten Putin. He was supposed to impress him that it would be the worst thing he could ever do in his life. And all I remember Biden doing was talking. For example, here's what you could have done. What you could have done was ship incredibly advanced weaponry to Ukraine. And you could have, as the Russians were building up and saying, listen, Putin, every time you put more men on the border of Ukraine, we're going to send state-of-the-art weaponry to Ukraine. So whatever you do, we're going to counter, and you're going to suffer massive casualties. But he never did that.
But Russia has suffered massive casualties.
Right, but by the skin of their teeth, the Ukrainians managed to hold on. But if they'd had Patriot missile batteries, advanced tanks, advanced aircraft, the Russians would have been annihilated in the very beginning. So,
Hey, Lance, just out of curiosity, because here's what you said about Trump and everything, and there is a counter in the Republican Party that is saying that he is going to run because he says he is the alternative and all of that. And I do know that DeSantis was one of those, but now Mr. Christie is jumping in the race. And as one that is a conservative, that meaning you, Lance, what are your thoughts about Chris Christie running? Should he be running? Does he stand a chance against either Trump or DeSantis?
I would tell you about that, but we're unfortunately we have a musical interlude, fortunately, which is much more eloquent than what I could have answered. Please come around.
Join the music, so we're gonna give him a full screen.
On an intellectual go. Lance and Rick show. Don't go. The Lance and Rick show. On an intellectual go. The Lance and Rick show. Don't go anywhere. Stay right there, baby. Are you having fun? It's a JD March original. Special guest, Amen. Magic smoke. Magic smoke, save me. Hope you enjoyed the show. My name is JD. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here as your musical part of the show. The Lance and Rick Show, our intellectual go. The Lance and Rick Show, don't go anywhere. Right. Yeah, Come on, boys, come on back.
All right, so
Let's break. Let's break.
are we breaking?
I think we're breaking.
Breaking.
At Shirley Lou and Associates, powered by First Financial Security, our mission is to help all people achieve financial security and peace of mind.
My team and I are here to help you reach financial security tomorrow and for generations to come.
She is one of the most sincere and compassionate people that I will ever meet in my life. She sincerely wants to build a legacy where no young woman that she meets is left destitute, that they are able to be self-sufficient, to provide for a family in an emergency, to build for their future and for future generations.
At Shirley Lou and Associates, we are changing the face of insurance and retirement plans. Our mission is to lead, empower, and grow. We are the home of tax-free retirement. We provide comprehensive planning for businesses, rollovers for retirees, and individual personal financial planning.
I'm a very people-oriented person. It's important for me to make sure my clients feel in a safe environment, make sure I feel in a safe environment, that I can trust the people that I'm working with. And I feel that here working with Shirley and my team. These people are more like family to me.
Shirley has donated time and resources to the Shelter House, Women of Good Works, Good 360, Women That Soar, local churches, and the LISA Initiative. The LISA Initiative helps inform, educate, and empower women and their families' financial security. We believe entrepreneurship is a possibility for all walks of life.
Reach out to us. We would love to have a conversation to see how we can help.
Over here. It's on. Look at the screen. But Mark's gone.
There he is.
Okay,
Hello,
we're back.
hello.
Okay.
I got one more regret. I have one more regret.
What is your one more regret?
I've been working on a book since I was freaking 17 years old, so that's 46 years. I had it sold. I had a book deal for 4 days back in, 2014 with Riverhead Books, and then they called me back and said, nope, no deal. We couldn't get the higher ups. The editor called back and said, couldn't get the higher ups to agree to it. But I've got this book. It's not the same book, because the book I've been working on since I was 17 would have involved throwing too many, being kind of nonfiction, would have thrown too many undeserving people under the bus. So I turned it into fiction starring not me. And it's much further along than it's ever been. But, not having your first book even completely written at 63 years old is, after I've written, and if you look around online, you can find millions of my words. Some of them very badly edited. Like if you took a transcript, a sloppy transcript of this show, it would not be the best it would not be my best work, because it's, we're out here flailing. But there are millions of my words available online. Some of them are, a lot of them are frickin' tweets. I've tweeted 40,000 tweets times 30 words per tweet is 1.2 million words right there.
I was going to ask you, couldn't you self-publish these days? I mean,
There is
isn't
some
that-
self-published stuff. I work with a guy named Scott, who's we've had discussions like this, except less contentious and less political, for almost 9 years now. And a lot of those discussions have been published by Scott on Amazon. They're available. But again, they're unedited, unrefined, pretty sloppy.
Well, why don't, I mean, if these are genuine regrets, aren't these things you could do something about?
Yeah, if I were less, I do stuff about it. I've got this chunk of writing that it's like 120,000 words. I should be able to shape it into a thing. It's enough words to make a book, but the words aren't a book yet.
But the good news is that this is something you can do something about. You have control over all
That's
of this.
true.
I mean, you can't go back to your high school sweetheart, but you can.
I didn't have a high school. Girls steered well clear of me. It was clear that what the deal was, that I was not what you wanted in a boyfriend. And my desperation to have a girlfriend, and obviously being a mess.
I don't think there's any way of pleasing them. I think they're very picky, ladies are. But I just wanted to interject. You asked me a question about Chris Christie, Mark.
Yes.
I think that nobody has a chance but Trump, and all of the other people running against him are on suicide missions.
So you think it's only Trump, even if Trump keeps getting indicted in different venues?
I think he'll have to pardon himself from prison. But you can't. He's going to get. Right now he leads both Biden and DeSantis in the polls. And the weird thing is that when it comes to electability, people don't generally change their mind from who they decided a year out. So if you've got your idea on who you want to vote for, a year later it's usually the exact same person. So in the last polls, he was several points ahead of Biden, and he's at least 20 points ahead of DeSantis.
So I've got more numbers.
As far as the Chris Christie and Pence and all those people, they're so far behind, none of them matter. And furthermore, there's something that Rick has to worry about, and that is Bobby Kennedy Jr. is going to be a real problem for Biden.
He is a worry. Robert Kennedy Jr. is this, I'd say, kind of a lunatic. Most of the, all the Republican candidates will draw votes away. Trump right now in polls has 54% of the top choice of 54% of Republicans. The next closest challenger is DeSantis with about 20.5%. And then everybody else is at 5% or less, roughly. Nikki Haley, 4%. Pence hasn't declared yet, but is it actually Pence might be like 7%, but still terrible. But all the Republicans will take votes we lost, all right, so we'll keep going. We'll take votes away from Trump. But Robert Kennedy Jr. might pull votes away from Biden.
Yeah. So,
but I just bet $3 that Biden gets reelected, and if he wins, I win another $3. So that bookie is putting Biden's chances at 50-50.
Well, this is the problem. The way that Trump won in 2016 was by winning Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and I believe Georgia. All 4 of those states are completely corrupted now. in their election procedures. So I don't think Jesus Christ could win Pennsylvania right now.
I think there's one thing we can agree on. Who wins depends on voting procedures, right? In swing states, basically, where how easy it is to vote, who gets to vote, what the rules of voting are. I mean, all that stuff shapes the elections. And so in 2016, Trump loses the popular vote by 2.85 million votes. But it doesn't matter because he wins by, I think, 77,000 votes in 4 critical swing states. In 2020, Biden wins the popular vote by 7 million. But again, it doesn't matter because what matters are like 45,000 votes in critical swing states, right?
But I don't believe that.
You don't believe it. You believe it's all a conspiracy.
Yeah.
But wait, let's talk about hold on. Let's talk about conspiracy.
I think it was rigged.
Let's talk about conspiracies because I would say in the present era, right wingers believe in more conspiracies than the left wingers do. And when you look at the conspiracies that have been borne out one way or the other, it's most the one conspiracy that from the late 20th century that we know for sure happened was that the CIA helped bring crack cocaine into the inner city, which was all part of this weird triangular trade to get arms to, was it Iran? What was the whole deal? But anyway, I mean, that's been well substantiated. When you look at the rest of these possible conspiracies, that Marilyn Monroe was murdered, that there were multiple shooters of JFK, all these, none of these conspiracies have been proven. It's like I believe that about 1% of proposed conspiracies turn out to be true. And the conspiracy that you're supporting, this alleged conspiracy that the election was stolen from Trump, I believe is way, way too complicated to have happened.
Okay. Well, you don't know anything about it at all.
No, you're gonna. Oh, but let's talk about Dinesh D'Souza because one of your heroes,
yes,
in supporting this conspiracy, in proving this conspiracy, is Dinesh D'Souza, who came out with this. Now you're gonna say it's completely legit. This movie called 2,000 Mules.
Yes.
All right, which purports to show how the election was stolen, and which people on my side have said has been like just brutally debunked in a zillion different ways. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about what just happened earlier this week, where somebody tweeted, that Republican Fox News viewers are dumber than other people. And then Dinesh D'Souza tweeted, yeah, well, look at black people who score less than other people on IQ tests on average. And it's an ugly, ugly time. And then I tweeted.
Wait, you got the whole quote wrong, but finish your joke.
All right.
Go ahead.
No, I had a tweet that went crazy relative to that. I don't know, had like 100,000 views of mine where I called, Dinesh D'Souza, a felon and a liar. And, that's more successful than most of my tweets. And then I followed it up with, when you look at, all right, people who make claims about the average IQ of entire nations or races races have very icky and suspect agendas. But when you look, but the people who make those claims claim that, like to show that Asians outscore everybody else, right?
Yeah.
But then when you look at the culture of what's emphasized, a lot of it is, I believe, is cultural literacy and also cultural emphasis. And in many East Asian countries, there is an emphasis on doing well on IQ and IQ type tests that is it's the strongest emphasis among any countries, among all the world's countries. And to show that, all you have to do is Google SAT cheating South Korea, SAT cheating Taiwan. Every couple of years, they have a cheating scandal on the SAT in an East Asian nation, which isn't to say, one time they had to throw out all the SAT scores in an entire nation because there was so much apparent cheating, which isn't to say that every kid in South Korea cheats, but it does reflect how much emphasis there is on doing well on those tests.
First of all, JD, can you check to see if this is working?
We lost Mark.
We're filming still? Right, so what I listened to Dinesh D'Souza this morning, actually, and what he said was that what the first tweet was that the fellow believed that the leftists believed that Republicans have lower IQs than Democrats. That was basically what he said.
Yeah.
And Dinesh D'Souza,
the guy tweeted, "You Republicans are dumb," basically.
Yeah, but because they have lower IQs, because Republicans have lower IQs. That's what he said. So Dinesh D'Souza said, well, the backbone of the Democrat Party are black people, and they score lower on IQ tests. So the guy responded by saying, well, IQ tests aren't truly reflective of a person's intelligence. So D'Souza said, well, then you're the one that started by talking about IQs in the very beginning. So you've just invalidated your first point, which I thought was very clever of Dinesh D'Souza, showing a high IQ on his part.
So,
but it gets to the larger issue.
Well, the whole topic is ugly. You can agree, right?
I think that there are some groups that have higher IQs than others, and
right, so,
it may be because of societal. It might be because of their upbringing. It might be because of the expectations of their family. It might be genetic.
All right, so I'm going to make an argument, but first I'm going to say, in a general sense, the whole arena of IQ and talking about who's smarter than whom is particularly ridiculous right frickin' now, because AI is about to, it's not here yet. What we have now is fake smart AI. We have AI, artificial intelligence, that looks smart at first glance, but really isn't that smart. It's just kind of, people who know kind of call it, it's a more sophisticated form of autofill, which is, when you're typing on your phone and your phone predicts what the word you're trying to type. So we don't have smart AI yet, but 5 years, 8 years from now, it's probably going to be kind of smart. So the idea that we're still arguing about who's smarter among humans when AI is on the verge of kicking our asses, or really when the people who are best at exploiting AI will be kicking everybody's asses.
Interesting.
But I want to talk about the Flynn effect, which is that in the 50 years after World War II, the world's average IQ went up by 15 points, which is pretty huge. And Flynn himself, James Flynn, the guy who discovered the effect, said, well, it's not like our grandparents were all morons. He believes it's generally a matter of cultural literacy, because what happened in the 50 years after World War II is that the entire world became connected in a worldwide information net, where almost everybody in the world by the end of the 20th century had access to a ton of information. You know, even in the poorest countries, people had cell phones and could get at a bunch of and could see a bunch of stuff. And Flynn argues that when you get cultural literacy, you get exposed to the forms of thought that are measured by IQ tests. And he has a specific example, which is you ask somebody who's, you know, from a country, a low information country, how are a fox and a rabbit alike? And the answer you get in a naive country is what an answer that would be counted as wrong on an IQ test. Somebody says, what? A fox chases a rabbit. A fox catches a rabbit. A fox eats a rabbit. And that would be 0 points on an IQ test, because the kind of thought that would get you the right answer would be, all right, they're both mammals. They both have fur. They both have 4 feet. And they both walk on 4 feet. That's how they're alike. You know, they're warm-blooded. But to know that that's the kind of thinking that the question is asking about is a matter of cultural literacy.
Yeah, I sympathize with your point, because I took an IQ test when I was 10, and I took another IQ test when I was 45, and I had lost 25 points. And I realized that when I reread the test as an adult that I did so badly on, there were all these questions where if you didn't pick the most obvious answer, you were wrong. And you sort of had to know what they thought the most obvious answer was. So any kind
you were out thinking the test.
Yeah, I was becoming creative. I was like thinking, you know, I was adding my own personal experience to it. So I do think that, just from my personal view and from what you said, that there's a cultural development and environmental. Nurture is as important as nature in developing intelligence.
I think as Flynn makes a similar argument with regard to, like, well, black people's verbal skills versus like rich white people's verbal skills. Because I think it's Flynn, might be somebody else, but in the posh household, you've got 2 parents, and you know, they're right down, like when I failed to apply to Harvard in 1977, 20% of all applicants got into Harvard. Now it's less than 3%, which is insanity, because that means you have a gazillion qualified students who aren't getting in. And the crap you have to do to get into an elite college now is so crazy that it takes, your odds are best if you have an affluent 2-parent household to help the kid navigate all the crap you have to do. It helps to go to a private school with a super competent counseling department. You know, in a public.
Hi, Richard. How you doing?
Ahoy, Jennifer. Lovely to see you. I'm so excited we're partnering on Virgin Voyages.
Yeah, I'm really excited too, but I was thinking that maybe before we announce it, that we should decide on my official title at Virgin Voyages.
Yes, and I already have a few options for you.
Okay.
What about something catchy like, don't be fooled by the ship that I got. I'm now Jenny from the dock.
Okay.
Dame Jennifer Lopez,
Isn't there like a paperwork and like a sword involved?
Supreme Goddess of Mermaids.
You know what? Let's just tackle the title thing later. I'm just excited to share our gorgeous ships with the whole world.
Okay, look, I'll brainstorm a little more and catch up soon on it. Mermaid in Manhattan?
I mean, I like all of your music, but if you've got more songs like that one you did, like the ones you do on the spot about our show, that's just, it's, to me, that's not selling, that's not giving people your true.
Hey folks, we're back. Sorry about that and everything. Sorry about the commercial break and all along those lines. And we're having some technical difficulties on this side that I'm trying to work on. But I did have a very important question for you, Rick, that we can address when we come back from one other commercial, which is tomato, fruit or vegetable? Because that is something important. I actually just had a tomato snack earlier. So is it a fruit or a vegetable? You're the intellect here. So which is it?
I think it's a fruit, right?
That is correct. It is fruit, but I think it's considered vegetable as well. So this actually has the best of both worlds.
That, you know, are we on? Is this part of the show?
I was just asking you that really quickly. It might be a little side bit and everything, but I'm going to run one more commercial and then we'll come back live. I think you had the performer that was going to perform as well. So I can, if you want us to go to him, we can go to him real quick, or y'all can continue the discussion and everything, because I can edit out part of this.
That leads to, I'm going to answer that when we come back about the tomato, because it's
Okay.
one more dumb thing I did in my life.
Are we filming? When do we film? Are we on right now?
We're going to a commercial right now, right?
Right, that is correct.
Okay, here we go.
Thanks.
Even when you were little, you dreamed big. Maybe you had visions of the good you do in the world, how you might change your community. Now you have the means, but there are so many worthy causes in need of help. Where do you start? Your community foundation has the answer. It's local and dedicated to improving the community where you live. Here's how it works. You can start your own fund by giving cash, stock, real estate, or other assets. If you wish, your community foundation will help you match your interests in the arts, education, economic development, or other causes with charities that share your passion. Plus, you can decide whether you want to give now or later. Community foundations offer tax advantages and personalized services that create a seamless giving process for you. They'll work with you or your professional advisor. It's your choice. And as your giving helps to better your community, everyone benefits, now and in the future. Community foundations help you on your path to personal philanthropy, making it easier for you to do good. So when you're ready to give, visit your community foundation. Together, we can create something special that will last forever.
Fostering a pet for a friend or neighbor can keep families together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Thanks for hearing me out, bro.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
We're on.
Yes, we're back. Like I was saying earlier, that $6 million question was about the tomato. It is fruit or vegetable. So I'll turn it off to you, and y'all can have discussion around that and the other things that y'all were discussing.
All right, I think it's a fruit. Mark, did you get that whole IQ thing? Was that on? No. Anyway, I have a personal stake in that tomato question because I believe it was one of the questions. There have been about a dozen questions in the history of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire that turned out that the show got wrong, and it led to a contestant being knocked off the show. And did you get that? Oh, okay. And I got one of those bad questions, and I ended up suing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Unsuccessful. But anyway, back to IQ and the SAT, getting into college. So if you wanted to have a shot at getting into an elite college now, one of the Ivies or Stanford or Northwestern, WashU, you need to take a bunch of AP classes. You need to apply to a dozen or more schools. You need to, have your the rest of your resume fleshed out with appropriate, activities, and that whole thing takes. You have a much better shot if you come from a private school and you come from an affluent, tact family. Carol and I, it's the people who have the best chance of getting in and doing well on the SAT. It's a family effort. You know what resources you can spring for tutoring. It's a whole thing. That if you're just like a smart, ambitious kid in a single parent household in Chicago going to a public school where they have one or even zero college counselors, for a student body of 3,000, your chances are much worse. And similarly, kids from intact, affluent households have more developed vocabularies on average because there are two parents talking to each other as adults do, and with divided responsibilities for raising the kid. There's more interaction between kids and adults. But in a single struggling parent household, you say one parent working 2 jobs, 3 kids, it's kids talking to each other. The parent is working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. So it's out of the household, or asleep, or cranky because overwhelmed. And you say you've got an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. Those most of the interaction is going to be among the kids, little between kids and adults. And so, yeah, the rich kid is going to, an advantaged kid is going to have a more developed vocabulary and maybe more developed other things coming from a less struggling household.
Yeah, and I also think that when I was growing up, there were books. We had a library in our house, like most people. But I mean, I remember books everywhere.
Yeah.
and if you're from a home where there are no books because they're too expensive or they're not valued on something that they have in the house, well then I would imagine your IQ is going to get lower when you grow up.
Well, I mean, your cultural literacy will be less. And now there are even more forces. Like, I'm less able to read books now. My concentration and focus has been eroded by my diet of social media. And in general, like, when we wanted to know something, we have to hope it was in the family edition, the World Book Encyclopedia. Or you had to go down to the library and hope you could find a book that had the facts. Or if you were really desperate, get microfiche of some newspaper from 20 years.
Right.
Which everything was a pain in the ass.
Right.
And now every fact in the world is pretty much at your fingertips.
But that should be raising poor people's IQs, though. I think.
Yeah, but I mean, when I look at like I said, I used to read 5 books a week. Now I'm lucky to read 20 books a year.
Yeah, but Lance and Rick, isn't part of the problem that when I went to college, and that was in the early 80s, a lot of folks, when they were studying, would get those lovely Cliff Notes and everything, and you would use those Cliff Notes as part of your study tool and all in that kind of way, and then you would definitely get a decent to a great grade, depending on how well you use the Cliff Notes. But now every student can go to Google, they can go to AI, they can go to a number of other sources. So and maybe we've gotten to the point that there is too much information at people's fingertips, and maybe there's not enough critical thinking, and because you can just basically look up anything and have any answer. Like if I wanted to know the Oscar winners of the 1930s, I could literally Google that and find out what the answer to that particular thing was, and not have to do as much research as we used to have to do in all those days. I remember even when I was at Marquette, I remember doing a whole newspaper article around this guy in Milwaukee that was doing bat research. And so I literally went and I think interviewed the guy that was doing that research and all in that space. But now if I was a student, I could just look up what his research was and find all kinds of dissertations about his work and the work that they were doing and all in that space. So have we become too informational, too much information is out there at the disposal of not just our young folks, but everybody, whether they're 8 or 80.
If you want people to develop, good skills, like now you can just go to ChatGPT or some, other chatbot and say, give me 800 words on the major themes in Othello, and you get a whole essay, and it won't be original, but the thought won't be original. It'll be a boiled down version of the most common thoughts available in the world about Othello. But you've got 800 words.
But you're not going to be as detail oriented, because right now we've done several of these series about 2 weeks worth and everything, and I'd say we're probably about maybe a third of the way through the painting and everything in that space. And part of that is because Rick is a non-cooperative model sometimes, because I have seen Lance kind of like move his chin and move his neck and move you around a couple of times. But I'm going like in the artistic version and everything. And I know that on a recent episode, Lance said he wasn't worried about this, but I'm imagining that they could come up with a chat GPT that would literally say, I want to draw Rick Rosner, and it would come up as a drawing looking much like that drawing off to the side in like about 2 or 3 minutes. It wouldn't have that same kind of nuance as a Lance original. And that is what I think is missing, is that nuance and everything. But Lance, are you worried that that could happen, that somebody could come along and invent a chat GPT artistic version that could literally draw Rick?
Lance answered that question last week.
Well, what I said last week is that you've got a good view of this painting right here.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So there, even if you have the greatest AI in the world, the AI is only going to produce an image on a computer screen.
Right.
So if computer screens were a substitute for art, then no one would go to Paris to see Da Vinci's paintings at the Louvre. Nobody would go to Florence to see Michelangelo's sculptures. But people still need to do that because the image on your computer screen is not a substitute for experiencing a material work of art. So as a matter of fact, I don't even have much confidence in having people see my work on my website or when I send them images over the internet, or even looking at this painting right now on our show. You need to see art in person.
Yeah,
it's not because I'm some kind of purist. It's just that they look entirely different. And in the field of art, quality is what matters. And the quality of seeing a painting in person with your eyes is going to be higher than the poor substitute of seeing an image on a computer screen.
Yeah, seeing this stuff in person is crazy.
I can imagine it's got to be. I'll definitely look forward to seeing it in person. But there is also a form of art. My dad actually does some of this work and everything that is abstract art. And if you look at some abstract art, it's kind of like looking up at the clouds. I might look up at the clouds and I might see a picture of like Picasso up there or something along those lines. Somebody else might look up there and see a whole jungle scene because there's that whole interpretation thing. And there is a difference between realist art, which is what I think you do a lot of and everything, because that is going to be the image of the gentleman, whether it's Lance, whether it's Rick or whether it's somebody else and everything. And then there is the more interpretive art, which is kind of like, if I look at it, I might have one interpretation and somebody else might have another interpretation. I think last time we talked about Andy Warhol, and some people will look at Andy Warhol and they'll just see a paint can, whereas other people will be like, that's an amazing piece of art. So I just wondered your thoughts around realism versus abstract art and everything.
Well, I don't believe in abstract art. I think there's some value to it depending on the artist. But the main problem I have with abstract art is that to me it's generally a purely visual sensation, which is fine. Everybody likes beauty. Everybody likes to see interesting imagery. but you're limited in what you can express. So, for example, when Norman Rockwell painted a painting that celebrated motherhood, he was able to say exactly what about mothers he liked, and what a mother would look like, and what the mother's activity would be, and the overall mood. Whereas if you're limited to abstraction, you can't say any of that. You are creating a purely visual sensation. So you can't tell a story with abstract art. That's one reason I'm not interested in it. Secondly, I would rather look at human beings than collections of colors. I just find them more interesting, and I would rather look at a painting of a beautiful woman or a sculpture of an athlete than any kind of abstract collection of shapes. And I think that's normal.
Also, Lance wants his paintings to have spiritual meaning and spiritual heft.
But along those same lines, Rick, there are artists that are in that lane. I know that I had the pleasure, I guess it was about a year ago, of interviewing a gentleman that literally found trash and he made art out of that trash. And there were a lot of folks that were paying good money to actually collect some of that art that was basically what.
I forget his name, who makes beautiful, awesome mosaic portraits out of trash and hills. Like I think he did an Amy Winehouse, out of hills reflecting her sad history with drugs. Yeah, but anyway, to get back to Lance, I and a bunch of other people like to tell Lance, what if you painted this? What if I want Lance? I've wanted. It would be passe now, but Lance never did it anyway. I'm like, Lance, why don't you do a series of portraits of distracted drivers, which is a very LA thing. It's a very everywhere thing, of people driving while talking into their phones, because he could do beautiful like very realistic paintings of these a-holes on their phones. And your response to suggestions like that is?
Well, I want to do things that I feel strongly about, and pretty much once a month someone gives me a suggestion of something they would paint, or they think I should waste my time painting. First of all, it takes a really long time to do a good painting. But secondly, the whole point of being an artist is to express your own personal beliefs and express your own personal interests.
And to find your own niche, because I was thinking of the artist, I can't think of his name. I want to say it's like Leonard Nimoy, but that's the guy from Star Trek. But it's an artist that is actually there in LA, and I think he may still be living, but he made his reputation off of doing sports portraits and everything. And it was kind of, what was his name?
Good. IIQ. Leroy Neiman.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the one, right? Exactly.
He was very popular. And his paintings now probably sell for, I don't know, he did a lot of them and they probably sell for $50,000 a piece. But I mean, a lot of art right now is the art of shock. Like if Lance did, Lance has trouble getting coverage by art critics because what they want to see the latest thing, and Renaissance painting isn't the latest thing. If you did a series of ultra close-ups in great detail with great precision of just buttholes, if you just did a butthole series, I bet you could get a gallery show.
Now, what if you did a show of? Because a friend of mine actually did this, and you actually mentioned the gentleman, but
all these great ideas.
You would never paint a series of buttholes.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was going to say, because a friend of mine actually did a series around Obama. He did like the many faces of Obama, but it was done in a style similar to Ernie Barnes or Romare Bearden. So it's kind of that elongated and not fully realistic facial features and everything in that space. But he definitely had some success with that, and definitely had some collectors that have bought that. So do you think you could do maybe a realist portrait of all of those politicians that you both admire and don't admire? And that would be a show that the museums would get into. So like if you did your style paintings of, say, Trump, Obama, Bush, and Bill Clinton. And I'm just using those because those are...
I can answer this. Okay, so Mark, the goal of being an artist is not to be popular with museums. It's to express something that you personally feel strongly about. So I first of all, I don't think there are any politicians that I would trust to paint because 5 years later you find out they were frauds. Most of them, you know, there are very few politicians that really deserve to be painted. But secondly, I don't do things that are topical because truly great art is both universal and timeless.
Which works against Land. There are careerist artists, right? But just look for the shock value of something.
Well, the other thing is this.
So hold on a second. I got Rick on this earlier, so I'm just trying to make sure that I understand. So you have said a couple of times that there are things that you admire. I'm not saying everything, because you also say there are things you don't admire. But there are things you admire about Mr. Trump. And I do know that President Trump, and I do know that after every president is elected, they get a library, and they get a library of some sort or another. They get to put in whatever they want into the library. So if Mr. Trump, after he's either elected again or not elected again, and they build the Trump library, because there will be a Trump library whether he gets convicted or not. There'll be a Trump library because every president gets a library. If they build a Trump library, I'm hearing you state on television, national and international television, that if he came to you and said, will you put one of your paintings here in my library, that you would not put the painting in the library because that's not your style.
No.
Would you throw your hat into the ring to paint Trump's official presidential portrait?
I would paint Trump's portrait. I think he's a great leader. But I know that I've been wrong about people in the past, and you have to be very careful about who you paint. I now have mixed feelings about Bush, whereas I used to really like him. And I would never agree to paint Obama or Biden or any of these other people. People think it's people always say, yeah, well, if someone offered you $1 million, you'd paint Obama, and I wouldn't, because this isn't about money or fame. I'm doing this because I am impelled to express personal things. But I would do portraits of somebody that is an average person. I don't look into the moral background of people that hire me to paint their portrait.
Yeah, you painted this ass.
So I'm thinking that you probably did not agree with Colin Kaepernick and the kneeling down thing and everything. So Colin came to you and asked you to do a portrait of him, since I know he's in, or at least he was in California at one point. You would not paint Colin Kaepernick.
No, I wouldn't. No, and I mean, the people don't realize that it's so strange. Somebody was asking the other day, if you won the lottery, would you keep painting?
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, it's not a matter of money. I'm doing this because I have something to express. It's not a Leroy Neiman, for example, got famous doing colorful paintings of sports.
Right.
That I don't care how famous he became or how much money he made. It's of no interest to me whatsoever. And the other thing is, I just want to dispel a myth. Doing something really shocking is not going to make your art career either. I know a lot of people that have that idea that if they do something really shocking, the art world will pay attention to them. And that doesn't happen either. You're just going to make a fool of yourself.
But if you won the lottery,
Wait a second, but
hold on.
Yeah.
If you won the lottery, would you take a bunch of $100 bills, put them on a canvas, gesso them, and then do a painting on top of a bunch of $100 bills?
No, I wouldn't. So
then what's the point of winning the lottery?
Right.
But along those same lines, you said the shock value doesn't work, and I do remember that there was an artist that got in all kinds of trouble for his shock value, and I did find it had some offensive elements, but I also think I understood where he was going with it, and that was Mr. Mapplethorpe, who did a whole lot of paintings that were considered anti-religious and all in that space, and it definitely included, I think urine was involved in it, and a number of other things, but it had that shock value, and he definitely had some notoriety there for a minute. I don't know that he maintained that notoriety, but he had some notoriety there for a minute.
Well, he died at the height of his fame. But look, the art world is leftist. So if you want to succeed in the art world, any kind of anti-Western, anti-capitalist, anti-American, anti-traditional values will give you an advantage if you're trying to show in New York, but or LA. But the idea that first of all, Mapplethorpe was already famous, and because he was a gay man involved in all kinds of sadomasochistic activities, he simply photographed the things that he was involved in, and he would show those things along with other things he did. He was a good photographer. But it's not, you can't fool the art world. You can't do something really shocking and have them love you, because there are thousands and thousands of 19-year-olds in art schools right now that have that idea, and they're just going to end up making fools of themselves. It won't make any difference at all.
We have 5 minutes. We should probably make this the last segment.
Yeah, this needs to be the last segment and everything. I was going to tell y'all that and everything. Just
We get 5 more minutes until we hit the half hour, I think.
yeah, about 5 more minutes. Along those same lines, I'm just curious because there are a lot of folks that you mentioned photographers, and I have some friends in that space as well. And I'm an admirer of Adam Ansel and some other photographers. But now people are saying that they are running into troubles because everybody has a camera and everybody has a digital camera. So I just wondered your take on that, Lance. I know you're more of a realist painter, but I'm sure you have some photography friends. Do you have any concerns about their career and it's being threatened and everything? Because I do know that there are a number of folks that are going like, hey, whether it's things that are being captured about police or about violence or whatever else is going on, or even sports activities, folks are glad to have those digital cameras, and there's thousands, if not millions, of shots being taken, and then folks are like, well, what's going on with the regular photographers?
Photographs are probably 2 billion photographs are taken. Lance?
Well, Mark, it's the same question with my painting. You don't worry about whether somebody's going to put you out of business if you're not in business. This isn't a business. If you're a photographer who takes great joy in photographing lions or babies, then it doesn't matter what the rest of the world is doing. It doesn't matter if there's a billion other people with cameras. You're going to be photographing lions, and you're going to be damn happy about it. And if people find that there's something more meaningful about your photographs of lions, that's great. That's you've justified your choice of profession.
Carol and I saw Kehinde, what's his last?
Kehinde Wiley.
We saw his show up in San Francisco. And have you seen his bronzes?
Yeah, I don't think he did those himself.
How do you think he did it? They're monument. Kehinde, why?
Okay, Kehinde Wiley is a realist artist that got famous
He did Obama
years ago for doing. He's been around. He's been famous for about 10 years for doing fairly good classical portraits. I mean, I don't think they're that good, but
they're visually arresting.
Well, they're pretty good. And he recently went into the field of sculpture, and he's done these. There are these massive, highly detailed, highly realistic sculptures they're admirable sculptures, which Rick is talking about. But
It's black people lying down in bronze, and they're probably 15 feet from hyper realistic, from head to toe, 15 feet.
Hey, Lance, along those same lines, and I know we're winding down. I actually had two quick questions. Yep.
I don't think that he did those.
How did he do them?
He's famous for hiring people, and there are now scanners. There are machines that can scan a human body and then blow it up to a specific size, and
Right.
then there are teams of people that can bronze it for you, especially in China. So he's a little secretive about how he produces these sculptures, but I know that he's admitted to hiring teams to help him do his paintings.
But that's the whole history of art.
Well, I mean, one of the greatest people that I was going to mention, and I know that she is world renowned, but I mean, she is definitely had some help in her designs, and I'm actually going to try to see her show that is here in the Raleigh-Durham area sometime in the next week or two. But I don't think anybody will doubt that Ruth Carter is an amazing fashion designer and all in that space. But it's not just Ruth Carter alone. She's got a whole fashion team behind her, and she's the one that did Black Panther and a number of other movies that she is known for, those kind of extravagant costumes and everything. But I just wonder your thoughts about fashion designers also, since you are in that art space, and definitely she is one that I've heard a lot of things about. But I was wondering if you had some thoughts, Lance, about some fashion designers that resonate with you.
Well, I mean, I think that a fashion designer working on a film is part of a team.
Right.
So there's no question about authorship, who's being creative and who isn't. It's commercial art is always a team effort, because it's, you're going to get things done fast, well, for obvious reasons. But
when you worked at Mattel making art, how many people did it take to get like a Star Wars action figure from somebody saying, "Hey, we should do that," to market?
Yeah. Well, very often, okay, people don't know this, but toys are actually miniature sculptures. Yeah, people think they're toys, but they're not. They're little teeny works of art made by real sculptors. And I worked at Mattel for a few years making toys, and they're made by teams of people. Now there's one person that might do the faces, one person that might do the figures, and sometimes there's one person that does the whole thing. But there's always a designer that's ordering the project. There's a project manager. Sometimes you trade pieces with the guy next to you. So you finish one part, he finishes the other.
Is there a hinger who takes the
Yeah, there's one guy whose job it is to make the thing move.
Right.
That the mechanics of it. All I'm saying is this: in general, if you claim that you're the one that painted a certain painting and that you did it yourself and you sign it, then you shouldn't be hiring other people to help you. Now, you could have an assistant that maybe prepares the canvas for you or does some little prep work, but a lot of artists these days are working as teams, and they keep the team secret. And I think that's very
with
very
AI.
sad.
It's going to be even worse, because when you ask AI to write something or paint something, even though nobody's getting credit, when an AI does a painting, it's taking the millions of paintings that have been stuffed into its, information bank. And so that, when you say AI, paint me, Captain Kirk on a unicorn, millions of artists contributed to the final image because they're all in that AI's brain.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Rick, does Santa Claus know that you stole one of his elves to be on this show? Because as Lance was describing his work on Mattel, I was going like, wait a minute, that sounds like he was working up there in the North Pole. So I want to know if Rick, you've informed Santa Claus that you stole one of his elves, because I'm thinking Lance is one of his elves.
Yeah, we actually at Mattel we would get emails that would circulate throughout the company, and they would start with, "Hello, elves, we've got a new project for you." So you guessed correctly, Mark.
With that, we should probably wrap up, right?
I think that's a great place to stop because it was one of my greatest lines. Thank you.
There you go.
All right, we're stopping now. So, do you want to do another show after this?
Yeah, that's fine.
No, we're good. We'll stop right there. We'll run some commercials.
Get this.
All of that. It's been another fun show and all of that. So I'll catch you. Are we going to do it Sunday or next Tuesday, Rick?
I don't know. I think Sunday's a little soon.
Tuesday will work, or Tuesday or Wednesday. I mean, this is Wednesday.
We'll see. It's tougher to get down here with the traffic on a weekday. I don't know. We may want to push it till
The following Sunday?
Yeah.
That'll work.
Okay. All right. Thank you for staying up late with us.
Hey, no problem. It was enjoyable as always.
All right. We'll talk in a few days. Thank you.
All right. Sounds good.
Hello, I'm Guy Young, President and CEO of Uniworld Boutique River Cruises. As a proud member of the Travel Corporation family of travel brands, Uniworld is part of a joint initiative called Tread Right. We have a strong tradition of supporting the places we visit, and Tread Right supports us in this work. As a travel business, we feel this is our responsibility. For the past 2 years, we have been involved in a sustainable river cruising project. We have worked closely with Tread Right and the sustainable tourism charity, the Travel Foundation, to better understand and manage the environmental impact of our river cruise ships. As an award-winning boutique luxury cruise line, we understand that the strict standards we maintain will ensure the satisfaction of our guests. Every year we raise the bar on standards for environmental performance, an issue the cruising industry has not traditionally given the attention it deserves. Our efforts working with the Travel Foundation seek to change that.
Hello, I'm Sue Hurdle, CEO of the Travel Foundation. The Travel Foundation is a charity that works with the travel sector to improve the sustainability of tourism, protecting the future viability of the industry, improving customer experience, and of course benefiting the people and places that we love to visit. To date, the Travel Foundation has audited Uniworld ships on water and energy use and waste production, and a set of recommendations have been developed to help achieve measurable reductions in these areas. The Travel Foundation will use the results of the project to develop a sustainable river cruising pack that will be made available alongside its wide range of other online tools for the benefit of the wider industry. As the river cruising industry continues to grow and develop, this tool will provide much needed guidance so that development happens with the best possible outcome, helping to ensure a bright and profitable future for the sector.
Europe's incredible cities are what compels so many travelers to visit the continent year after year. They inspire our unique travel itineraries and drive us to continue to protect these places so our customers, their families, and the people who call them home may continue to enjoy them for generations to come.
We thank Uniworld for its progressive stance on these issues and for supporting our work. And we hope very much that this will inspire other companies to tackle the sustainability issue and find out how the Travel Foundation can help them to help themselves.
Working with the Travel Foundation ensures we will not only improve our operations, but that together we will have an impact on the tourism industry at large. The results of Uniworld's sustainable initiatives on the rivers of Europe and Egypt will facilitate the creation of tools and standards to benefit the entire river cruise sector.